Chapter 896. In less than half a month, Honorable Zhenwu and Honorable Yin, he had already gathered almost all of the fragments of the ancient divine world that were scattered outside. The reason why it originated from Honorable Qi Yang of the Qi Yang Empire. Honorable Qi Yang had been severely injured during the invasion of the True Sun Great World 1,000 years ago and had no choice but to flee the True Sun Great World to seek help from the Great Sun God Temple. However, as Tsing Hui entered the Divine Wilderness Great World and left a great Tao imprint outside the Divine Wilderness Great World, even though the great Tao imprint could not intimidate the true great divines, it was enough to make the Great Sun God Temple, which only had a sovereign, not dare to make a move easily. Under such circumstances, Honorable Qi Yang did not even dare to return to the True Sun Great World, let alone invade the Divine Wilderness Great World. He could only take up an ordinary position in the Great Sun God Temple. Whether it was power, or influence, it could not be compared to when he was in the True Sun Great World. However, when he left the True Sun Great World, he also took away a part of the inheritance treasure of the True Sun Great World, which was the last fragment of the ancient divine world. Tsing Hui could not help but be speechless after hearing this news. We have to make another trip to the Great Sun God Temple. Tsing Hui said, make a trip to the Great Sun God Temple. Honorable Tao Immortal Qing Shui laughed. What is the Great Sun God Temple? How can they be qualified for us to visit them personally? Sword God Tsing Hui, you are underestimating the title of great divines. If Sword God Tsing Hui trusts me, I will directly send a message to the Great Sun God Temple Master and ask him to escort Honorable Qi Yang to you to ask for forgiveness. How about that? Tsing Hui was slightly stunned when he heard this. He also did not want to make another trip to the Great Sun God Temple. Although the Great Sun God Temple was not far from the True Sun Great World, a round trip would take at least 1 or 2 years. Rather than that, he might as well tidy up the matters of the Divine Wilderness Great World while waiting for the Great Sun God Temple Master to bring Honorable Qi Yang to him. Thinking of this, he directly said, if that's the case, I'll have to trouble Tao Lord Clearwater to handle this matter. I'll make a trip to the Divine Wilderness Great World. When the people of the Great Sun Divine Hall have escorted Red Sun's sovereign here, I'll return to the True Sun Great World. How can this be considered a problem? Sword God Tsing Hui, I think you should really take in some followers. The followers I'm talking about are not the native cultivators of your Divine Wilderness Great World. These restrictions aren't very powerful and won't have any effect on us, but they'll still be effective in stopping those rulers who have cultivated the mixed Yuan sacred body. Okay, thank you. It's a small matter. Tsing Hui nodded to Tao Lord Qing Shui and directly entered the teleportation array between the True Sun Great World and the Divine Wilderness Great World, returning to the Divine Wilderness Great World. As he had just returned from the small world of the Grand Development Gate not long ago, he immediately noticed the barrenness of the Divine Wilderness Great World when he came back. He sighed inwardly. The grade of the world really determines the upper limit of the world's development. Even with my continuous help, it's just pulling up seedlings to help them grow. If I want the Divine Wilderness Great World to truly step into glory, the only way is to restore the entire Great World. The cultivators of the Master of Chaos were proficient in destruction. Their means in other aspects were not worth mentioning at all. To have a great divine ability expert destroy the Divine Wilderness Great World did not require much strength. But to have him repair a great world, it would probably take hundreds or thousands of years. I'll use the identity of the Ancient One to sneak into the divine system of the glorious Sun Sovereign to get close to the place where the great Tao Law is stored. I'm afraid it will take some time. During this time, it's not good for Tao Lord Qing Shui to follow me. I'll let him restore the Divine Wilderness Great World. As long as the Divine Wilderness Great World can be restored, even without my help in the future, there will still be many world creation and even chaos realm sovereigns in the world. Tsing Hui thought to himself as he arrived at the mountain gate of the Hunyuan sword sect. Since the crisis of the Divine Wilderness Great World had been resolved, the Hunyuan sword sect was naturally reestablished. With Tsing Hui, a powerful expert, as the nominal supreme elder, the Hunyuan sword sect had become the #1 sect in the divine wilderness great world. In the entire Hunyuan sword sect, there are not only Firmament and Zhu Zhao, two top experts in the world creation realm, but also several experts in the unrivaled realm and hundreds of cultivators in the divine true body realm. It truly had the atmosphere of top force. To be able to achieve such an achievement, the secret assistance of the Void Sword Pavilion in order to show goodwill to Tsing Hui could not go unnoticed. Otherwise, even if Firmament and Zhu Zhao had treasures like the Originator, they might not be able to condense a small world in 1,000 years and step into the world creation realm. Compared to the achievements of Firmament and Zhu Zhao, the others lacked the treasure of the Originator. Even with the help of the Void Sword Pavilion, the speed of their progress was still not significant. Among the many elders, only 6 were in the realm of traversing. Most of the rest were in the divine real body realm. Some of the elders had even been caught up by the genius disciples of the new generation. Some of them had even reached the divine real body realm in the same realm as them, which made the old elders feel ashamed. Tsing Hui arrived at the Hunyuan sword sect and felt the thriving scale of development of the Hunyuan sword sect. He was quite pleased. After looking around the Hunyuan sword sect for a while, he was surprised to find that it was the time of the centennial sect competition of the Hunyuan sword sect. Moreover, it was the second day of the sect competition. This is interesting. I originally planned to recruit 3,000 genuine immortals from the Immortal Path civilization and let them cultivate the 3,000 great ways, but now it seems that it's obviously not necessary. Moreover, if everything goes well, the same can be said for the 49 complete great ways. As for the smelting of the bloodlines of the 12 divine beasts, I can consider it. If I don't give them the great path of unification and let them use it as a foundation, I wonder if they can smelt the bloodline laws of the 12 divine beasts into the great path of unification. Tsing Hui faintly had an idea. Although he had not yet completed the second step of the great path discultivation method, this did not prevent him from finding people to try the third step of the great path discultivation method in advance. These people were naturally able to cultivate to this extent because of their opportunities. Tsing Hui could also use their cultivation to accumulate some experience in the third step of the Great Path Disc. If the cultivation failed, it was not a big deal. At most, he would give them some resources when the time came. Thinking of this, Tsing Hui's figure flashed and directly appeared in the study of the Firmament Master. It was only the second day of the Hunyuan Sword Sect's sect competition. As the sect master of the Hunyuan Sword Sect, the Firmament Master naturally would not be present in person. At this moment, he was still calculating the distribution of resources among the various factions of the Hunyuan Sword Sect. Although the Hunyuan Sword Sect was now the #1 sect in the Divine Wilderness Great World, it was still composed of the Rainbow Sword Sect, the Black Flame Sect, the Illuminating Eris Sect, the Firmament Sect, the Sword Shadow Sect, and other factions. It was naturally divided into factions. As the sect master, it was not easy for him to be impartial. Tsing Hui's arrival was silent. However, as his figure appeared, the shadow cast by him attracted the attention of the Firmament Master. The Firmament Master raised his head in surprise. After seeing Tsing Hui's appearance clearly, a look of pleasant surprise appeared on his face. "Tsing Hui, you're back. Greetings to the Great Elder." Tsing Hui saw the change in the Firmament Master's attitude. The Firmament Master even bowed to him cautiously. He waved his hand to stop the Firmament Master from bowing. "Master, you don't have to be so polite. Just act like before. No matter what achievements I have in the future, I am still a member of the Firmament sect. This cannot be changed." A faint smile appeared on the Firmament Master's face when he heard this. However, he still did not dare to be as relaxed as before. A great divine ability. What kind of great existence was that? Among the myriad of worlds, it was second only to the Supreme Master of Chaos. In the face of such a great figure, the Firmament Master did not dare to treat Tsing Hui the same way as before, even though he still had old feelings for him. Seeing this, Tsing Hui felt helpless in his heart. However, he could not force it. He could only go straight to the point. When I arrived at the sect, I found that our Hunyuan sword sect was holding a sect grand competition that is held once in 100 years. Yes, since 800 years ago, our Hunyuan sword sect has had a tradition of holding a sect grand competition. According to the age of cultivation, the disciples are divided into 3 levels: under 100 years old, under 1,000 years old, and above 1,000 years old. The winner will be specially trained and even be given a precious treasure. It has been held for 8 years. Very good. This time, the sect grand competition will be postponed for a month. During this month, the scale of the sect grand competition will be expanded. Also, pass down my order. Those who perform well in the sect grand competition will be able to join my sect as my nominal disciple. Chapter 897. Hunyuan Sword Sect. The number 1 sect in the Divine Wilderness Great World. Although there were foreign forces, such as the Void Sword Pavilion in the Divine Wilderness Great World, the main purpose of the Void Sword Pavilion was to deter other forces. Most of the time, it was in a state of seclusion, so ordinary people and even cultivators of the longevity realm could not come into contact with the level of the Void Sword Pavilion. Under such circumstances, the power of the Hunyuan Sword Sect had completely covered the entire Divine Wilderness Great World. Previously, the Xuanji Palace, Annihilation Sect, 6 Sacred Sects, Unique Sect, Natural Sect, Universal Sect, Great Tao Sect, White Rainbow Sword Sect, Pan's Gate, Wind and Thunder Sect, 5-Element Sect, and other forces were first invaded by the Illusion World, Northernmost World, Taiwa Great World, and Yujin Great World. Their vitality was greatly damaged, and even their sects were exterminated. Then, the Hunyuan Sword Sect ushered in an unprecedented era of glory, and its power plummeted. In addition, there was news in the Hunyuan Sword Sect that Xing Hui was suspected to have become a great medium, which made the light of the Hunyuan Sword Sect cover the entire Divine Wilderness Great World, and no other sect could be on par with it. Today, the Hunyuan Sword Sect radiated throughout the Divine Wilderness Great World. The remaining sects, such as the Xuanji Palace, Annihilation Sect, 6 Sacred Sects, still existed, but compared to the Hunyuan Sword Sect, they were far inferior. In the Hunyuan Sword Sect, not counting the Supreme Elder Xing Hui, who had become a great medium, and not counting the Chaotic Realm Supreme Sword Master Bai Hung, who had joined the Void Sword Pavilion, the Sect Master Firmament alone and the Great Elder Zhuzhao Master had 2 Supreme Masters. The remaining cultivators in the Unrivaled Realm and Divine True Body Realm numbered in the hundreds. As for the surviving forces, such as the Xuanji Palace, Annihilation Sect, 6 Sacred Sects, Natural Sect, Wind and Thunder Sect, the strongest was only at the Divine True Body Realm, and there were only a few of them. The weaker sects did not even have a Divine True Body Realm cultivator. In front of the Hunyuan Sword Sect, which was at its peak, they were like dim candlelight. Under such circumstances, the Centennial Sect competition of the Hunyuan Sword Sect naturally attracted everyone's attention. But this time, when the Supreme Elder Xing Hui returned and promised that the cultivators who could stand out in the competition would become his disciple, the Divine Wilderness Great World went crazy. Countless cultivators from the Divine Wilderness Great World were scrambling to join the Hunyuan Sword Sect and register to participate in the sect tournament. Sect as a sect disciple. Sect disciples sect as sect as. Sect. In fact, even the Void Sword Pavilion had sent the Liha Sword Master to meet Xing Hui in private, hoping that the Void Sword Pavilion and the Hunyuan Sword Sect could exchange a group of disciples and absorb the strengths of each other's sections. At the end of the day, didn't they all hope that a disciple of the Void Sword Pavilion would catch the eye of Qing Su and be taken in as a disciple? They just said it in a more euphemistic way. A great divine, true body realm cultivator was a top existence in all the heavens. It was completely reasonable for them to be able to climb up to such a great divine, true body realm cultivator. Unfortunately, in order to ensure the purity of the inheritance of the Hunyuan Sword Sect, Tsing Hui rejected all the cultivators outside the Hunyuan sword sect. He only allowed the cultivators of the Hunyuan sword sect to participate in this competition. Even the new disciples had to wait until the next competition to be eligible to participate. As soon as this decision was made, there were cries of grief, and, at the same time, it accelerated the destruction of other sections. Even if those sects took out the best cultivation methods and resources, they could no longer retain the geniuses of the sections. These geniuses chose to join the Hunyuan sword sect one after another, making the Hunyuan sword sect stronger and stronger. According to this trend, even if the Hunyuan sword sect did not destroy these sects, it was only a matter of time before the inheritance of these sects was destroyed. In this lively atmosphere, the competition of the Hunyuan sword sect had not yet begun, but it had already attracted the attention of countless people. There were even many top forces of nearby worlds that specially sent representatives into the divine wilderness great world. On the one hand, they wanted to pay homage to the great divine true body realm cultivator who was closest to them. On the other hand, they also hoped to be on good terms with the Hunyuan sword sect, lest one day the Hunyuan sword sect plan to expand and bring an inevitable disaster to them. Tsing Hui did not care about the details. After handing over the matters of the competition to the Firmament Master, Tsing Hui summoned his two true disciples, Hunyuan and Zhiyun. Due to the fact that Hunyuan had received a strand of Tsing Hui's divine sense to supplement his divine soul, his performance over the years had been extremely outstanding. In addition, as Tsing Hui's disciple, he had received the best cultivation resources. Today, he had already cultivated to the divine true body realm. Among the many disciples of the Hunyuan sword sect, he was absolutely outstanding. However, compared to Hunyuan, what really surprised Tsing Hui was the disciple he had taken in on the Fortune Continent, Zhiyun. Zhiyun had an extremely high talent in sword Dao. Later, he was introduced into the ultimate sword Dao by Tsing Hui. His current cultivation had already reached the pinnacle of the ultimate sword Dao, which was the vacuum-shattering realm. This was the ultimate realm of the ultimate sword Dao that Tsing Hui had created back then. However, Tsing Hui sensed that after Zhiyun cultivated the ultimate sword Dao to the vacuum-shattering realm, he actually had a faint tendency to overtake the old and surpass the old. Since then, he had gradually created the fourth realm of the vacuum-shattering realm. This was a special stage of transforming one's body into a sword and refining one's own body as a peerless divine sword. Ordinary cultivators cultivated the divine true body, but he cultivated the divine sword body. In a mountain range that had been reinforced by layers of formations, Tsing Hui looked at Zhiyun, who was displaying the tyrannical power of his divine sword body to his heart's content. His eyes were filled with amazement. A moment later, he waved his hand and a figure appeared beside him. Father. The figure that reappeared was the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit, who had transformed into a human. For thousands of years, under the relentless erosion and enhancement of his great Tao laws, the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit's combat strength had also constantly increased. Although it had yet to reach the level of a great divine ability, its combat strength was already not inferior to a ruler who had cultivated the Chaos Origin Sacred Body. Scarlet Abyss, suppress your cultivation to the divine, true body realm, and have a good competition with my disciple, Zhiyun. Tsing Hui instructed. From this, it was not difficult to see that he already had the intention of truly treating Zhiyun as his disciple. In fact, if Zhiyun's performance was extremely outstanding, he would even have the thought of letting him inherit his mantle. Of course, his cultivation path itself was entrusted to the creation divine Jade. Even if Zhiyun became a successor, his future achievements will be far inferior to Tsing Hui's own. But the great Tao of Unity was different. His great Tao of Unity could be passed down to anyone and leave behind his own great Tao of Unity legacy. Yes, the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit, who had received the order, responded respectfully. With a flash, he had already appeared on the battlefield. At the same time, his aura was constantly restrained. In an instant, he had shrunk to the same level as Hunyuan, the divine true body realm. Please, please, Hunyuan replied with a serious expression. He did not wield a sword, but his body turned into a sword. Every part of his body was equivalent to a peerless divine weapon. The rampaging sword chi could even shoot out from every orifice on his body. Sing Hui looked at Ji Yun, who was fighting with the Scarlet Abyss sword spirit, thoughtfully. Ji Yun's path reminded him of a phenomenon that he had mentioned to Water Lord Qing Shui not long ago. An exclusive creation divine artifact. An exclusive creation divine artifact that was tailor-made by the Master of Chaos through great contributions. In order to truly unleash the power of an exclusive creation divine artifact, one had to let their great Tao completely conform to this creation divine artifact. In other words, when a cultivator really possessed an exclusive creation divine artifact that was tailor-made for them, they could no longer be called a true human form. Instead, they were equivalent to the weapon spirit of the creation divine artifact, or the energy provider. The direction that Ji Yun was showing vaguely made Sing Hui have this idea. Creation divine artifact. According to the books that I read in the infinite library of the vast great world, the essence of a creation divine artifact is actually a world created using a special method. The form of this world is more advanced than ordinary small worlds. In a pictographic sense, this world should be a miniature chaotic universe. The cultivator resonates with this chaotic universe through their own great Tao nomological laws, thus possessing the power to destroy heaven and earth with a single strike, Sing Hui pondered. In fact, in the end, it was the difference in the essence of power. Ji Yun is now trying to refine himself into a creation divine artifact. However, although his idea is not bad, the difficulty is too great. Humans are ultimately humans. How difficult is it to evolve into an existence similar to a creation divine artifact? Ji Yun can't do this, but the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit might not be able to do so. If the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit can evolve according to the method that Ji Yun deduced, when the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit is strong enough one day, it can completely devour and refine the power of the creation divine artifact to continuously strengthen itself and become a true creation divine artifact. Sing Hui looked at the Scarlet Abyss Sword and then at Ji Yun. Ji Yun's cultivation was weak, but the cultivation method that he deduced was unique. The ultimate sword Tao that he deduced and perfected allowed Sing Hui to see the opportunity to evolve the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit into a creation divine artifact. One had to know that the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit was born from his sword intent, and its core was also his great Tao of unity. If the Scarlet Abyss Sword Spirit could really transform into a creation divine artifact, it would be equivalent to having a custom-made creation divine artifact. Moreover, it was a creation divine artifact that could continuously devour other creation divine artifacts to evolve on its own. When the time came, with the help of the Scarlet Abyss Sword's power, he could completely erupt with combat strength close to that of an extremely powerful divine ability user. Thinking of this, Sing Hui stopped the two of them from fighting and said without hesitation, Scarlet Abyss, from today onwards, you will follow Ji Yun and learn. You will perfect his self-refined ultimate sword Tao with him. Ji Yun, do your best to deduce according to your thoughts. If there's a chance, I will find a creation divine artifact for you, so that you can understand the final form of your technique. I will explain to Venerable Firmament that he will spare no effort to support you if you have any needs while you are deducing the new realm of your ultimate sword Tao. Ji Yun received Sing Hui's approval and replied happily, Disciple will not let master down and perfect the ultimate sword Tao. His appearance caused countless cultivators in the Hunyuan sword sect to cheer. The entire Hunyuan sword sect seemed to be in an uproar at this moment. A powerful expert. A small Hunyuan sword sect actually has a powerful expert overseeing it. I really don't know what kind of opportunity this Hunyuan sword sect had in the divine wilderness great world for the heavens to let such a peerless genius be born in the divine wilderness great world. Some of the cultivators from outside the divine wilderness great world, including those at the sovereign realm, looked at Tsing Hui as he descended from the void and sat on the main seat. Their eyes were filled with envy. Great divine ability user. I finally saw a true great divine ability user. Oh my God, is that the true body of a great divine ability user? On him, I saw countless mysteries of space. He seems to be the embodiment of the great Tao of space. A world with a thought expert who also cultivated the Kuan Peng bloodline could not help but exclaim. His face was filled with excitement. In particular, another expert whose cultivation seemed to have reached the critical point of the great Tao of space was suddenly stunned when he saw Tsing Hui, the natural fluctuations of the great Tao of space emitted from his body. The next moment, he ignored the chaotic and lively environment in front of him and directly sat down cross-legged. After the aura on his body rose and fell, it quickly soared into the sky, causing a violent change in space. Breakthrough. This was a breakthrough. And it was a breakthrough from the world creation realm to the chaotic realm. This scene of reaching the heavens in a single bound caused countless people to go crazy and envy. If it were not for the fact that several sword masters and dozens of sword masters from the Void Sword Pavilion were here to maintain order, the atmosphere would have become even more frenzied. A great divine ability user is the embodiment of the great Tao. Facing a great divine ability user is equivalent to facing the great Tao of space. Cultivators at the Void Transformation realm and the Void Shattering realm are not that difficult to comprehend. Great existences like the great divine ability user can only be given a heart of the world, and it is enough for them to comprehend. But for those at the world creation realm, facing a great divine ability user like Tsing Hui is equivalent to gaining an opportunity to become a sovereign. Even if this opportunity is not obvious, as long as they grasp it, they can still reach the heavens in a single bound. The plucking shadow sword master looked at Tsing Hui in the direction of the Hunyuan sword sect, his expression full of respect and shock. The respect was naturally for great existences like the great divine ability user. As for the shock, it was shock that there was someone who could climb from an ordinary person to the peak of the cultivation path in just over 1,000 years. Even though the plucking shadow sword master had already prepared himself for this, but when he thought of the appearance of Tsing Hui when he first saw him, and then looked at the current Tsing Hui who had transformed himself in a Tao and was emitting boundless pressure, he still felt a sense of suffocation. A genius and an ordinary person, there was no comparison in front of you at all. Under everyone's gaze, the Hunyuan sword sect's grand competition was carried out in an orderly manner. At this moment, those who were sitting beside Tsing Hui were naturally the Firmament Master, the Jinjin Master, and the Liha Sword Master and the Clear Sky Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion. Other than these people, the Liha Sword Master and the Clear Sky Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion were also beside him. As for the rest of the people, they were either a distance away or did not have enough status. Sword God Tsing Hui, I wonder if you are satisfied with any of the 100 selected disciples. The Liha Sword Master asked with a smile. Tsing Hui glanced at the Liha Sword Master and asked, "Did Bai Shuai not come?" The Liha Sword Master looked a little embarrassed. However, the Rainbow Sword Master interrupted. "Grand Elder Tsing Hui, that girl, Shuai, has a strong personality. After learning that you have broken through to the Almighty Realm, she has spent most of the time in seclusion in the past 1,000 years. Although she has reached the Sovereign Realm, she is still unwilling to come out of seclusion, which is why she missed the grand competition of our Hunyuan sword sect. Please forgive us, Grand Elder Tsing Hui." Tsing Hui nodded when he heard the Rainbow Sword Master's words. He knew that although Bai Shuai looked very easygoing on the surface, she was a very strong woman in essence. If an ordinary person knew that they had broken through to the Almighty Realm, they might be so desperate that they would stop chasing after them. but Bai Shuang would not do that. This was also the reason why she could stand out from the Void Sword Pavilion in such a short time and break through to the Sovereign Realm. Thinking of Bai Shuang's character, Tsing Hui shook his head and did not say anything more. At this time, there was another burst of exclamations from the crowd. The two people who were originally selected as the seeded contestants had encountered each other in advance. The battle between the two seeded contestants naturally caused countless people to exclaim. The cultivators from the Void Sword Pavilion and other forces did not think much of it, and some even could not stand it. However, there was a lot of cheering within the Hunyuan sword sect. The battle gradually came to an end as the big shots like Tsing Hui chatted. With the protection of the Sovereign Realm, the disciples of the Hunyuan sword sect who fought with all their strength did not suffer any serious injuries or deaths. Even if they were seriously injured, the sovereigns could heal them immediately. 3 days later, the grand competition finally ended. The top 10 disciples and the top 10 elders and deacons all stood out. In particular, the first disciple and an elder were even more proud. They all stared at Tsing Hui with blazing eyes. Looking at these disciples, Tsing Hui then looked at the Lihe sword master beside him. Considering the proposal of Lord of Dao Qing he also smiled and said, "I don't know if there are any disciples of the Hunyuan sword sect that the Lihe sword master likes. If you can, you might as well choose 1 or 2 people to enter the Void Sword Pavilion to improve the relationship between our two sections." The Lihe sword master really wanted to improve the relationship between himself and the Hunyuan sword sect. Even if the disciples of the Hunyuan sword sect were not qualified to enter his eyes, he still quickly said, "Among these people, there is a good seedling. However, I would still like to ask Sword God Tsing Hui to choose first. It won't be too late for me to choose after Sword God Tsing Hui has chosen a disciple that you are satisfied with." "That's good." Tsing Hui nodded. However, the scope of his selection was not the top 10 people, but the top 100 people. A total of 12 people were selected. Among these 12 people, only 3 of the top 10 were taken. The rest were selected from the other 90 people. Moreover, Tsing Hui also announced his real criteria for selection. In a word, he would never give up. If this scene were to happen to other people, it would naturally cause dissatisfaction among the disciples. However, Tsing Hui's reputation in the Hunyuan sword sect and even in the entire Divine Wilderness Great World was too high. Although the disciples who were not selected were full of regret, none of them resented him. Instead, they regretted that they did not draw their swords to fight when they encountered an opponent they could not defeat and showed their tenacious courage and fighting spirit. After that, the Lihe sword master also chose 2 of these disciples out of courtesy, further improving the relationship between the two sections. Although these 2 people's talent was mediocre, they were the people that Tsing Hui had asked the Lihe sword master to choose. They were destined to be heavily cultivated after entering the Void Sword Pavilion. Perhaps their future achievements would be better than those cultivators who were more talented than them. This scene touched Tsing Hui's heart a little. He could decide the future of these disciples with a single word. How could the Master of Chaos not be the same? It must be known that even for the existence of the great divine ability, the luck and other attributes on the Son of Chaos interface still played a role. Previously, he could not understand these luck attributes. Now, it seemed that the Master of Chaos had set up a mechanism with the help of a special divine tool of creation. As long as someone increased their luck attribute, the divine tool of creation would naturally distribute some reasonable opportunities to those lucky people from time to time, allowing them to feel the benefits of the characteristic of luck. After understanding this, Tsing Hui could not help but have a deeper understanding of the strength of the Master of Chaos. The characteristics of the Son of Chaos were the best benchmark. Before he could get rid of the influence of the many characteristics of the Son of Chaos, he should never really face the Master of Chaos. Chapter 899. In half a year, Tsing Hui gave different pointers to the 12 new disciples and planted the seeds of the great path of unification in each of them. Qing Su had no plans of taking these seeds back. As a matter of fact, He was even prepared to waste them all. As long as they could provide him with some useful data and slightly lower his cultivation of the third layer of the Disc of Ways, he would be satisfied. After doing all this, he returned to the true Sun Great World. At this time, the great Sun Temple Lord of the true Sun Great World had brought the Emperor of the Crimson Sun Empire to the true Sun Great World to meet Tsing-Hui. Standing in front of Tsing-Hui, the great Sun Temple Lord, who had cultivated the mixed Yuan sacred body, was trembling with fear. Not only did he hand Crimson Sun Prime over to Tsing-Hui, he also gave him a lot of compensation. Considering that the Crimson Sun Empire had tried to break through the teleportation formation between the True Sun Great World and the Divine Wilderness Great World at the Sky Pass Valley and had placed a chess piece, Eternity, in the Divine Wilderness Great World, Tsing-Hui did not do anything to Crimson Sun Prime, but he accepted all the compensation from the great Sun Temple Lord. He believed that after he accepted these compensation items, the great Sun Temple Lord would definitely take back these losses from Crimson Sun Prime 10 times, no, 100 times. Crimson Sun Prime would also pay the price for coveting the Divine Wilderness Great World. After obtaining the fragment of the Ancient God World, Tsing-Hui immediately completed the fusion of the Ancient God World. After the fusion of the Ancient God World was completed, he immediately sensed the resonance between the Ancient God World and the true Sun Great World. Less than 10 billion kilometers. After sensing the location of the coordinates, Tsing-Hui's figure flashed, and he stepped out of the true Sun Great World. Then, he and Tao Lord Clearwater quickly traversed through the endless void. Those void storms that were extremely dangerous to cultivators below the divine true body stage posed no threat at all to these two great masters who had transformed their bodies into Tao. Instead, they were like emperors welcoming the arrival of their monarchs, automatically avoiding them and providing the two great masters with a peaceful path forward. It's here. Tsing-Hui arrived at the space where the Ancient God World was located. Is this where the ancient over God's kingdom is? Lord of Tao Qing looked around and said, "The Master of Gods is known for his strange and complicated methods. Although the Ancient One is only an intermediate god, he is the master of a god system. His god kingdom is well hidden. Even though I'm standing here, I can't sense the presence of his god kingdom." Tsing-Hui smiled and said, "The Ancient over God's father is a famous high god. He might even be a divine king or an ultimate god. He has made great contributions to the Master of Gods, which is why his son was able to obtain the blessings of the Master of Gods. A mid-god with such a profound background naturally cannot be treated as an ordinary person." With that, he said to Tao Lord Clearwater, "Tao Lord, please keep watch for me to prevent anyone from disturbing me." "All right." Lord of Tao Qing had promised to serve the Qing ruins for 10,000 years. If he was asked to engage in a battle of life and death with extremely powerful enemies during the 10,000 years, he might be reluctant to do so, but he obviously would not turn down such a small matter. After receiving Tao Lord Tsing-Hui's promise, Tsing-Hui quickly took out the Ancient God World that was formed from the Ancient God World. Although the Ancient God World was said to be formed from the fragments of the Ancient over God's kingdom, it only represented a part of the Ancient over God's kingdom. It was more like a key that was used to open the Ancient over God's kingdom and obtain his inheritance. As Tsing-Hui took out the Ancient God World, circles of ripples appeared in the void before him. After a while, a space tunnel appeared. Without hesitation, Tsing-Hui took a step forward and appeared in the space tunnel. Once Tsing-Hui entered the space tunnel, it closed automatically. At the same time, the entire kingdom began to stir, and a destructive aura was faintly emitted. In the middle of the kingdom, a vast, majestic aura rolled over. Even as a great medium, Tsing-Hui was greatly affected by it. This aura, is it the remaining blessing of the Master of Gods? Tsing-Hui's heart skipped a beat. In the next moment, the aura on his body began to change gradually. During this period of time, he had studied Ao Ta, who he had captured alive, as well as a series of mid-gods and lower gods. Now, using the characteristics of the chaotic life forms, he easily transformed his aura into that of a mid-god. Waves of divine power were emitted from his body and merged with the aura. In an instant, the aura faded and the ancient god world, which had been stirring, gradually calmed down. Who would have thought that the ancient overgod would have set up a backup plan in his own kingdom? If the master of chaos had cultivated the mixed Yuan holy body in the face of the remaining aura of the master of gods, he would not have been able to unleash even 10% of his power. In the end, he would have been killed by the trap set in the ancient god world. If the master of gods was a great medium who could withstand the remaining aura of the master of gods, the ancient god world would have chosen to self-destruct and use the power of the world to drag the master of gods down with it. Sing Hui quickly understood the ancient overgod's sinister intentions from this series of changes. He could tell that the ancient overgod's kingdom was not as simple as a mid-god's kingdom. The level of this kingdom was at the level of an upper god. It was highly likely that the ancient overgod had inherited his father's kingdom. However, the ancient overgod's abilities were limited. Although he had inherited his father's kingdom, he had not been able to refine it. As such, he had been stuck at the level of a mid-god for a long time. It's a pity I don't have the ancient overgod's bloodline. I can't use the transformation spell to transform into the ancient overgod and inherit this kingdom. However, although I don't have the ancient overgod's bloodline and can't transform into the ancient overgod, the owner of this kingdom has already passed away. The ancient overgod has also passed away. In order to prevent the kingdom from being lost, he deliberately left behind his own inheritance. I just need to study it carefully. It's not impossible for me to fully understand the inheritance of this kingdom and become the owner of this kingdom. Sing Hui sized up the kingdom, and his eyes shone brightly. Initially, he had been a little apprehensive about sneaking into the glorious sun god's holy system. He was worried that he might be exposed. However, if he could fully understand this kingdom and refine it, by then he would be a true upper god. As long as he did not expose himself to the master of gods, no one would be able to see through his disguise. At this thought, Sing Hui did not even bother to check out the various treasures in this kingdom. He quickly arrived at the core of the kingdom, the overgod's throne. As he arrived in front of the overgod's throne, a strand of divine thought was projected from the overgod's throne. It formed into a figure wearing a plain robe and filled with compassion. To be able to pass my test and come before my throne proves that you are at least a deity of the master of gods. It doesn't matter whether you have heard of my name or whether you belong to the freedom deity or any other deity. I have to congratulate you. You will receive my inheritance. The ancient overgod left behind a strand of divine thought. That's great. The master of the holy system is equivalent to an amalgamation of consciousness. Once the holy system is destroyed, the overgod's consciousness and consciousness will also be affected. Originally, I pretended to be the ancient overgod and claimed that I had lost some of my memories. However, there are still some hidden dangers in this method. Now that I have the ancient overgod's divine thought, I will definitely be able to replicate the ancient overgod's divine thought. As long as I'm not targeted by the master of gods, I could be considered to be foolproof. Qing Su did not give the ancient Lord God any chance to finish a sentence. With a wave of his hand, the ancient Lord God's remnant consciousness was already in his hand. The power of the Tao of coalescence began to circulate. The divine thought was instantly engulfed and analyzed by the Tao of coalescence. It was then refined into the Tao of coalescence. After carefully sensing the Tao of coalescence's analysis of the ancient overgod's divine thought, Sing Hui's aura began to change. The power of the Tao of Kuan Peng gradually dissipated from his body and was replaced by a brand new Tao. This Tao, it was vaguely related time. However, the so-called Tao of time was not the real Tao of time. It was a semi-finished Tao of time that was simulated by the master of time. It was a type of Tao of time that could be distorted and changed under the influence of gravity. To be exact, this was the gravitational Tao of time's Tao of time. The ancient overgod cultivated the gravitational Tao of time. The Tao of time that created this high god's kingdom also originated from gravitational Tao. Gravitational Tao is actually quite similar to the Tao of space that the Kuan Peng represents and the Tao of nothingness that the divine beast Hun Peng represents. It should be much easier for me to understand it. When a middle god breaks through to become a higher god, there will definitely be a significant change in the aura of the body. If I can reappear in the glorious Sun Supreme God's God system as a higher god, even if I am not exactly the same as the ancient over-god, as long as the aura of my divine thought is not too different, it is completely reasonable at this thought. Xing Hui immediately sent a divine thought to Water Lord Qing Shui and told her that she could go to the divine wilderness Great World or the true sun Great World to help her guard these two worlds. Meanwhile, you would have to cultivate in seclusion. This was exactly what Water Lord Qing Shui wished for. It was easy for a powerful person to cultivate in seclusion for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. If Xing Hui could really cultivate in seclusion for tens of thousands of years, he would be able to skip the agreed time between the two of them and save her a lot of trouble. With this thought in mind, Water Lord Qing Shui quickly left. On the other hand, Xing Hui began to refine this high god's kingdom and analyze the gravitational Tao of time. In the blink of an eye, 300 years had passed. With the help of a portion of the Fortune Jade's power, Xing Hui finally completed the refinement of this high god's kingdom after 300 years. As he moved, the vast and empty high god's kingdom began to shrink with him as the center. Soon, it had shrunk to the size of a speck of dust and merged into his body. The divine aura that he exuded was also released without the hindrance of the high god's kingdom. Now, I've barely reached the level of a high god. It's really not easy to study a different system of laws again. It only took me a few years to simulate the divine beast Kuan Peng's great Tao law, but it took me 300 years to simulate the gravitational Tao law of the Master of Gods, even with the help of the Fortune Jade's great Tao law. Xing Hui sighed. He shook his head and did not waste any more time. Now that he had become a high god with the identity of the ancient one over god, he had to hurry to the glorious sun god's divine system and find a way to steal the many great Tao laws left behind by the Master of Gods. The success of this operation was directly related to whether he could quickly complete the second level of the great Tao disc cultivation. Chapter 900. Glorious Sun God. One of the strongest ultimate gods under the Master of Gods. Unlike the Master of Chaos, who had many powerful ultimate gods, the Master of Gods was very united and valued by the Master of Gods, even though the number of ultimate gods was far less than the number of ultimate gods under the Master of Gods. Among them, the ultimate gods were even more so. After all, the Master of Chaos was so huge that he did not have to worry about losing too much of his body when he sent down countless incarnations. However, the Master of Gods and the Master of Time were different. Although the consumption of their incarnations was extremely small, they could not completely ignore it like the Master of Chaos. Once their incarnations were lost, it would still have a subtle impact on them. Under normal circumstances, such an impact would not cause any harm. However, if the Master of Gods was at a critical moment when he was fighting with the evil god could see through his weakness and attack him specifically. This would cause the slight loss to continue to expand and eventually decide the outcome of the battle. Under certain circumstances where it was inconvenient to send down incarnations, the ultimate gods could undoubtedly play a big role. That was also the reason why the Master of Gods was so concerned about the life and death of the ultimate gods. Xing Hui's incarnation of the ancient god quickly passed through the Master of Chaos territory and stepped into the Master of Gods territory. Unlike when he set foot in the territory of the Lord of Gods as a cultivator of the Master of Chaos, when Qing Su arrived there as a higher god, he immediately sensed the abnormality of the Lord of Gods territory. The entire domain of the Lord of Gods was like a gigantic and unimaginably complex web. Countless divine wills, consciousnesses, and faith channels filled every corner of the domain. The closer one got to a world or plane with many gods, the denser these divine wills, consciousnesses, and faith channels were. If one encountered a powerful God system, they would be able to see countless divine wills, consciousnesses, and faith intertwined together like a dazzling stream of light that could be seen clearly even from hundreds of millions of kilometers away. This network is the power that maintains the existence of the divine system. Xinghui stayed outside a high god divine system for a short while. The over-god of this divine system was like an ocean, while the mid-gods, low gods, and true gods were like rivers, streams, and streams. They continuously gathered their energy into the ocean, causing the ocean to expand and grow all the time. However, it was different from a completely formed sea. The sea, represented by the master of the divine system, would reverse the flow of some rivers and streams when they dried up, replenishing these dried-up streams and streams. This formed a special symbiotic relationship between the two, and its ability to resist risks increased exponentially. All rivers flow into the sea. It's no wonder that as long as an ordinary superior god establishes his own god system and becomes a divine king, he'll be at least equivalent to a great divine master. If his god system is slightly developed and has a few superior gods, he'll immediately be able to ascend to the position of ultimate god and be on par with the top great divine masters. If the god system is large enough and has more than 10 superior gods, or even close to double digits, a supreme ultimate god will be born. Xinghui muttered to himself. At this time, he had to rejoice that the glorious divinity had only 2 superior gods and 50 to 60 mid-gods as his subordinate gods. If the number of the glorious divinity's subordinate gods had doubled, with 4 superior gods and more than 100 mid-gods, the outcome of the ambush by the 6 great divine masters would have been completely changed. According to the information obtained, Xinghui had traveled for more than 30 years and finally appeared outside the divine system of the glorious divinity. The divine system of the glorious divinity was several times larger than that of the glorious divinity. The entire divine system was filled with 11 superior gods, more than 300 mid-gods, hundreds of thousands of lower gods, and even more true gods. Countless divine kingdoms formed worlds. In addition to the planes that were originally created by the Master of Gods, the entire divine system spanned tens of thousands of light years. It should be known that the tens of thousands of light years in front of them were not as empty and vast as the Milky Way, Andromeda Galaxy, large and small Magellan galaxies. The entire divine system was completely constructed by planes. It was equivalent to countless creatures living in each area. If all the creatures within tens of thousands of light years were to be added up, the number would definitely break through the sky. Even the photon computers of some low-level civilizations would not be able to calculate it. This showed how huge the divine system of the glorious divinity was. Xinghui carefully recalled some basic information about the ancient over-god at the periphery of the divine system of the glorious divinity. He then moved towards the divine system of the glorious divinity. Before he could get close to the glorious divinity's pantheon, a powerful divine power quickly came from the pantheon in front of him. Then, he saw a knight in armor riding a divine steed that was emitting white light come from the sky. The knight wore a blood-red cloak and held a knight's spear that was twice his height. He rode a spatial wave and soon appeared in front of Xinghui. Xinghui immediately recognized the identity of the knight in front of him through the information that he had read in advance. It was one of the 11 superior gods under the glorious divinity, the god of paladins, Genevieve. When he carefully sensed Xinghui's body for a moment, he could not help but be surprised. The ancient overgod. Although the ancient overgod was only an intermediate celestial, as the master of the celestial system, he could not be viewed as an ordinary intermediate celestial. Because of this, Genevieve was very familiar with the ancient overgod's aura. You have metamorphosed into a superior god? 4,000 years ago, your divine system lost contact with us. There were also rumors that your entire divine system was annihilated in the domain of the Master of Chaos. Now it seems that it's true. Yes, Sing Hui said in a deep voice, "My entire divine system was defeated. As the overgod, I also suffered an unprecedented injury in that battle. If I had not sensed the opportunity to become a superior god at the critical moment and used the power of my divine kingdom to escape the attack of those powerful beings in the domain of the Master of Chaos, I'm afraid that I would have perished in that battlefield forever." Genevieve said sympathetically, "I've also heard about that battle, but you were too deep in the domain of the Master of Chaos. Even the great divine Lord His Majesty did not dare to go to that domain to rescue you and bring you back, let alone me. Therefore, he could only watch as the situation deteriorated." At that point, he paused for a moment. "Fortunately, although all of you have sacrificed a lot in the end, the outcome isn't the worst. At the very least, you have perfectly refined the divine kingdom and become a high god. I believe that if your fallen vassal gods were to learn of this news, they would be gratified by your achievements in the underworld." Sing Hui nodded and tried his best to put himself in the shoes of the ancient overgod. "When the time comes, I will find a way to rebuild my divine system. Moreover, I will build an unprecedentedly powerful divine system and use the power of my divine system to kill all the enemies in the domain of the Master of Chaos who destroyed my divine system. I will use their blood and souls to wash away the hatred of my divine system. With your current strength as a superior god and the contributions you have made over the years, I believe that you will definitely become a great divine king," encouraged Genevieve. Genevieve encouraged. Sing Hui nodded and said, "Now that I have become a superior god, I'm afraid that I will need the help of His Majesty, the glorious Sun God, to fulfill the duties of a superior god. Therefore, I have come to seek an audience with His Majesty, the glorious Sun God, in the hope that I can receive His help and guidance. Come with me. I believe that His Majesty, the great glorious Sun God, will be very gratified to know that not only did you not perish, but you have also broken through to become a superior god," said Genevieve. As Genevieve said that, he brought Ching Su towards the core divine system of the glorious Sun deity. With his identity as the ancient overgod, Sing Hui's entry into the core divine system of the glorious Sun God could be said to be extremely smooth. He did not encounter any difficulties. However, as a divine kingdom could not accommodate another divine kingdom, when Sing Hui's divine kingdom arrived at the periphery of the glorious Sun God's divine kingdom, he could only use his divine energy to create a clone of himself and follow Genevieve into the glorious Sun God's divine kingdom. For any practitioner above the supreme realm, the safest place is their divine kingdom. If I were the glorious Sun deity, I would also store the most precious things in my divine kingdom. The Lord of Gods collected the broken great Tao principles of the immortal civilization back then. Although he never did the magnificent feat of regathering the 3,000 great Taos and even abandoned them now, these great Tao principles that are no longer useful to the Lord of Gods are still the most precious wealth to the glorious Sun deity. He would definitely keep these great Tao principles in his divine kingdom. When Sing Hui stepped into the glorious Sun God's divine kingdom, he was already carefully sensing the great Taos in the divine kingdom. When he was about to enter the palace of the glorious Sun God, the creation divine jade in his spiritual world finally vibrated slightly, as if it had captured the fluctuations of those great Taos. However, if Sing Hui really used the creation divine jade to draw those great Taos, it would definitely attract the attention of the glorious Sun God. At that time, Sing Hui, who was in his divine kingdom, might not be able to escape the pursuit of the glorious Sun God. Therefore, even if he had sensed the fluctuations of the great Taos, he still could only suppress the creation divine jade and did not dare to show any abnormalities. I have to make sure the glorious Sun God has no time to pay attention to the internal movements of his divine kingdom. Sing Hui quickly thought in his mind. In order to do that, there had to be at least a strong opponent who could make the glorious Sun God concentrate and not be distracted. However, the glorious Sun God was a supreme ultimate God. In the entire Great Development sect, there were only a few elders and the Gate Master who were worthy of his attention. With his current wealth, How could he invite these supreme experts? While pondering, Tsing Hui had already followed Genevieve to the interior of the divine palace. In the center of the divine palace, the glorious sun god who had received the news was sitting on the throne and waiting for Tsing Hui to have an audience. Almost at the same time when Tsing Hui saw the glorious sun god, he, who had been thinking hard for a long time, had already derived an extremely bold idea in his mind. Chapter 901. The Master of Chaos, the Master of Gods, and the Master of Time had a common enemy. The immortal Tao civilization was not even on the front line. There was only one opponent that they could treat as an enemy and treat with caution: the evil gods. The creation beings and chaos beings that wandered outside the territory of the immortal Tao civilization were at the same level as the three great existences. Although the evil gods could not compete with the Master of Chaos, the Master of Gods, and the Master of Time individually, they were the real opponents of the three great existences. In addition, there were many of them. Once they appeared in the territories occupied by the three great existences, they would immediately attract the attention of the three great existences, especially the Master of Gods and the Master of Time. Glorious Sun Divinity was the most loyal ultimate god to the Master of Gods. Once he noticed the trace of the evil god, he would definitely go and investigate. The evil god was so powerful that it could easily tear apart a divine kingdom of a supreme ultimate god. Therefore, Glorious Sun Divinity would only send his most powerful incarnation to ensure the safety of the divine kingdom. The more powerful the incarnation, the more energy it required from the cultivator. This gave him the opportunity to steal the great Tao laws. While he was deep in thought, Tsing Hui had already arrived in front of the Glorious Sun Hierarch. The Glorious Sun Hierarch was a top-notch, supreme, ultimate god. As his eyes fell on Tsing Hui, a terrifying pressure descended on his body. Even though Tsing Hui tried his best to control his great Tao laws, the deeply hidden great Tao of unification was almost revealed by the Glorious Sun Hierarch's invasive and probing gaze. Fortunately, at the critical moment, he transformed his great Tao of unification into the power of the divine kingdom. At the same time, he bowed his head respectfully and said, "The Ancient One, the superior god, greets the great glorious Sun Hierarch." The glorious Sun Divinity studied Qing Su for a long time. Only then did a slight smile appear on his stern face. "Not bad, Ancient One. You were able to turn danger into opportunity and refine your father's divine kingdom to become a powerful superior god. This is a blessing in disguise. If your divine pantheon was destroyed, so be it. Now that you've become a powerful superior god, it won't be difficult for you to rebuild your divine pantheon. In fact, it won't even be long before you'll be crowned king under the protection of many lesser gods and mid-gods, becoming a powerful divine king." Divine King Tsing Hui, in the form of the Ancient One, replied modestly, "This war has made me deeply aware of my shortcomings. As a superior god, I was caught in an ambush by the enemy due to my lack of understanding of the situation. My entire divine system was destroyed, and I almost perished in that disaster. This has made me feel heartache, and also made me realize my shortcomings. Compared to the great, glorious Sun Hierarch, I am far inferior in both governing and governing the divine system. Therefore, I hope that in the following period of time, I can earnestly request the glorious Sun Hierarch to allow me to stay in your divine kingdom and learn from your experience in managing the divine system, so that I can better fulfill my duties as a superior god and contribute my strength when your majesty requires it." Hearing Tsing Hui's words of surrender, the glorious Sun Hierarch nodded satisfactorily. In addition to his relationship with Tsing Hui's father, he immediately gave an accurate promise. "Very good, Ancient One. The fact that you have such thoughts proves that you have grown considerably over the years. Since you have the heart to learn to be a divine king, as a good friend of your father, I naturally won't refuse. You can stay here and learn from me for a period of time. It won't be too late for you to leave when you feel that you are capable of developing the divine system again. Many thanks to the great glorious Sun Hierarch for granting my wish. Sing Hui replied respectfully. After saying that, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly said, "By the way, Your Majesty the Divine Lord, I've sensed an unusual power entrenched at the edge of the great Master of Gods near the Master of Chaos bloodline. This power vaguely made me tremble with fear, so I didn't go too close to investigate. I only recorded a trace of that power's aura. In order to prevent that power from causing too much damage to our divine realm, Your Majesty the Divine Lord, please make a decision." "An unusual power? What kind of power?" the glorious Sun Hierarch asked curiously. "Please have a look, Your Majesty." Sing Hui gestured with his hand and simulated the power of the evil god he had sensed from the blood-red statue. The glorious Sun Hierarch was originally indifferent to the power that Sing Hui had presented. However, after carefully sensing the essence of this power, his expression became serious. When he thoroughly recognized this power, his face immediately became serious. "Where did you sense this power?" "In the 634th district, near the edge of the 634th district, near the territory of the Master of Chaos." Sing Hui answered truthfully. "These guys have sneaked in again. This time, let's see where they will run to. As long as we can locate their real bodies through their incarnations in the mortal world, the great Master of Gods will be able to severely injure them, or even kill them in one blow." The prophet of killing an evil god, the glorious Sun Hierarch's eyes suddenly lit up. At the same time, he turned to Sing Hui with a smile and said, "Ancient One, if the information you have provided is as I have guessed, then you have made a great contribution. If things go well, I will personally ask the great Master of Gods for your reward." "I dare not. I don't even dare to get close to that mysterious power. How can I claim credit? Moreover, although this power is extremely terrifying, it's very subtle and can be described as a fleeting moment. If Your Majesty wants to investigate it, I'm afraid you'll need some patience. At the same time, you'll need to protect yourself. I understand. You can't be too careful when dealing with such an existence." The glorious Sun Hierarch nodded. Hearing this, Genevieve seemed to think of something, and his face changed slightly. "Your Majesty, does that power come from?" The glorious Sun Hierarch nodded slightly at Genevieve. The Master of God's lineage was different from the Master of Chaos lineage. The Master of God's lineage grew up in a step-by-step manner. Therefore, very few cultivators would choose to believe in an evil god. Knowing that most of the evil gods were of the high god level, the glorious Sun Hierarch did not suspect that the Ancient One could not identify the evil god's aura. Moreover, he had already confirmed the Ancient One's identity and did not think that the Ancient One would dare to deceive him with this matter. This is a matter of great importance. No one knows what those terrifying existences are plotting. For safety's sake, I will bring a few high gods with me. When the time comes, even if our identities are exposed, we will be able to hold on until the Supreme Master of Gods arrives when facing the incarnation of that terrifying existence. Your subordinate is willing to go with Your Majesty." Genevieve immediately expressed his stance. When Sing Hui saw this, he pretended to hesitate for a moment before stepping forward to ask for instructions. "I am also willing to contribute my meager strength to Your Majesty, the glorious Sun Hierarch. There's no need for that. Ancient One, if the information you provide is true, you'll have made a great contribution. When the time comes for you to establish a god system, I will definitely do my best to help you. Now, I will grant you access to the glorious Sun Tower. You can walk through all the areas below the 70th floor of the glorious Sun Tower and read any information for free." Sing Hui had deliberately researched the glorious Sun Hierarch beforehand and naturally understood the importance of the glorious Sun Tower. The tower was the core of the glorious Sun divinity. Many of the supreme treasures in the glorious Sun divinity's possession were stored in the tower. As a matter of fact, if Ching Su's guess was correct, the laws should be within the tower as well. He just had no idea how many floors there were. Once he entered this tower, Tsing Hui would be infinitely close to the great Tao laws from the immortal civilization. Tsing Hui immediately put on a grateful expression. "Thank you, Your Majesty, the great glorious Sun Hierarch." Good. The glorious Sun divinity extended a finger, and a strand of divine force directly landed on Ching Su, who was trying his best to dodge. "I've already left my imprint on you. With this imprint, you won't be obstructed in any room below the 70th floor of the glorious Sun Tower." After that, he hurriedly left with Genevieve. Tsing Hui sensed the divine power mark on his body. He knew that this divine power mark would allow him to move unimpeded in the divine kingdom of the glorious Sun Hierarch. At the same time, he would be completely monitored by the glorious Sun Hierarch. Even if he escaped to the territory of the Master of Chaos, the glorious Sun Hierarch would still be able to sense his whereabouts through this divine power mark. He is indeed the most powerful ultimate God. Tsing Hui carefully sensed a divine power mark for a moment. This divine power mark could be said to be perfectly integrated with his life fluctuations and aura fluctuations. Unless the person marked was dead, there was no conventional way to erase it. What a pity! If I were an ordinary high god, I might not be able to do anything about your imprint. However, my life energy and divine soul energy that belong to the ancient overgod are imitated by the remnant divine consciousness of the real ancient overgod. As long as I modify the frequency that I imitate, I will naturally be able to avoid being marked by this imprint. Linley muttered to himself. Tsing Hui wore a faint smile on his face. Although the increase in his combat strength after his life essence reached the level of chaos life essence was not great, it had to be said that the passive increase brought by this life essence was completely unique. If it were not for the special advantage of being a chaos life essence, he was afraid that he would fall into a state of powerlessness when dealing with many things. For the next few days, Tsing Hui spent his time on the 60th floor of the glorious Sun Hierarch's Tower, reading books about the divine system's powers. He appeared to be kind and harmless. After a few days of preparation, the glorious Sun divinity finally set off. Not only did he create a powerful incarnation, but he was also personally escorted by 4 higher god-level vassal gods to the territory of the Green Ruins where the evil gods were suspected to exist. After the departure of the glorious Sun Hierarch, Tsing Hui waited patiently for another month until he was sure that the glorious Sun Hierarch had gone far away and would not be able to devote too much energy to the divine kingdom in a short period of time. It was only then that Tsing Hui put down his many affairs and began to plan his escape route. After leaving behind some means that could allow him to quickly leave the divine kingdom of the glorious Sun Hierarch, Tsing Hui dared not waste too much time. After concealing his aura to the extreme, he went to the top of the glorious Sun Tower and gradually activated the Fortune Jade. Chapter 902. The Fortune Jade had long sensed the presence of the divine essences and intended to guide them back to perfect the operation mechanism of the Fortune Jade. However, Tsing Hui had suppressed the Fortune Jade for a long time. Now that Tsing Hui had released his suppression on the Fortune Jade and actively urged the Fortune Jade to guide the divine essences to him, the effect of 1 + 1 is greater than 2. The many divine essences that were sealed in the Sun Glory Tower vibrated at the same time, pounding against the incomplete formation of the Sun Glory Tower. Streaks of divine essences shot out in all directions. The divine essences shuttled through the void and entered the Fortune Jade into Tsing Hui's body. Although these divine essences have been abandoned by the Lord of Gods, they were, after all, treasures bestowed by the Lord of Gods to the glorious Sun divinity. The glorious Sun divinity attached great importance to the gifts bestowed by the great Lord of Gods. Therefore, when these divine essences were pulled out of the Sun Glory Tower, the entire Sun Glory Tower burst into endless streams of light that shot straight into the sky and shook the entire divine kingdom. Relying on the power of the divine kingdom, the Sun Glory Tower locked onto Tsing Hui in an instant. At the same time, an angry roar was heard from within the divine kingdom. Following that, several deities, who were equivalent to the avatars of superior gods, appeared and reprimanded the Ancient One. The Ancient One, how dare you steal the treasure from the divine tower? You're digging your own grave. Tsing Hui did not even spare a glance at those manifested gods. When the glorious sun divinity's avatar came to his senses, he pointed at the barrier of the divine kingdom that he had prepared. A circle of ripples rapidly spread out from the barrier. The moment the ripples formed, the divine energy on his body began to change and became 80% similar to that of the glorious sun divinity. This divine energy fluctuation was the result of Tsing Hui's analysis of the locator mark left on him by the glorious sun divinity. If it were in the past, the glorious sun divinity would have been able to see through Tsing Hui's simulated divine energy fluctuation as soon as possible. But now, most of the glorious sun divinity's energy had been diverted to form a powerful avatar and was rushing to the fake location provided by Tsing Hui. The remaining avatar of the glorious sun divinity seemed to have just come to his senses and had just formed his avatar. This gave Tsing Hui, who had long been prepared, an opportunity. As he took a step forward, he, who was originally sealed in the divine kingdom, directly shuttled through the ripples. When glorious sun deity roared, he had already appeared outside the divine kingdom. Ancient One, how dare you? No, you're not the Ancient One. The Ancient One would never dare to be presumptuous in front of me. Despicable intruder, you will pay for what you've done. The avatar of the glorious sun divinity followed him out of the glorious sun divinity tower. At the same time, he clenched his fist. His divine kingdom and all the divine kingdoms of the glorious sun divinity radiated dazzling flowing light. Mighty divine energy soared into the sky from the many divine kingdoms and formed an enormous ceiling formation. It fiercely suppressed Tsing Hui's body. In an instant, Tsing Hui felt as though he had sunk into a quagmire and could not move. At the same time, the power of the avatar of the glorious sun divinity also rapidly increased. In an instant, his avatar had risen from the level of an ordinary superior god to that of the glorious sun divinity. Moreover, it was at the level of the glorious sun divinity who had a divine system. Relying on the power of his avatar, the glorious sun divinity made a grabbing motion. It was as though there were countless scorching suns erupting in his palm at the same time. They carried with them the power to destroy heaven and earth and grabbed Tsing Hui. If Tsing Hui was caught in the attack, his body would be completely destroyed by the destructive power. He would be seriously injured even if he did not die. He really lives up to his reputation as a legendary supreme god. Even though I've diverted more than 70% of his power away, the remaining 30% is still as powerful as the glorious sun divinity at his peak in a very short time. It seems that I can't escape using conventional means. Tsing Hui felt regretful. However, since he dared to steal the principles of Tao from the glorious sun divinity's divine kingdom, he must have been prepared to escape unscathed. Otherwise, he would not have chosen to die. Just as the glorious sun divinity's attack was about to land, Jian Wushuang's body shook violently. He directly tore through the space in front of him and drilled into the depths of the universe. This is... The glorious sun divinity immediately realized Tsing Hui's intention. His expression changed slightly, and he chased after him without hesitation. At the same time, there were three powerful high-level gods chasing after Jian Wushuang. The divine kingdom power of the three gods had merged with the glorious sun divinity's avatar and provided him with a steady stream of divine power. Even though the glorious sun divinity's avatar had left his divine kingdom, it still maintained a strength close to that of the glorious sun divinity. It was easy for him to kill 3 or 4 ordinary powerful experts. An avatar that did not carry a divine kingdom had such power. It was obvious how powerful the glorious sun divinity was at his peak. Do you think you can escape? The glorious sun divinity waved his hand, and a treasure that looked like a rainbow bridge appeared under his feet. As the rainbow bridge appeared, his speed skyrocketed. The originally barely maintained flying speed was broken in an instant. At this rate, It would not be long before the glorious sun divinity caught up with Tsing Hui. I can't go on like this. Tsing Hui's eyes sparkled. In the next moment, his body split into three. One of the figures carried the obvious aura of the Ancient One over God. The other figure had the space great Tao of the divine beast Kuan Peng. The last figure had the great Tao of the divine beast Kuan Peng. The last figure had the great Tao of the divine beast Kuan Peng. Even Supreme God Sun Glory could not identify it. Doppelganger technique? What kind of doppelganger technique is this? The aura of the three avatars is close to the level of a high-level god. The glorious sun divinity's expression changed slightly. Considering that he was just an avatar, he ordered, "Lay Ao, Zatches, the two of you go after the other two avatars." As he spoke, he set his sights on Tsing Hui's avatar that carried the aura of the Ancient One over God and went after it. Although he could not tell which of the three avatars was real and which was fake, he could tell that the Ancient One over God carried the aura of the divine kingdom. That was the divine kingdom of a high-level god. After a while, the glorious sun divinity's avatar caught up with the Ancient One over God's avatar. He took out an orb that was as bright as the sun. Endless light mixed with flames that could burn through the void formed a sea of fire that spanned tens of billions of kilometers. It seemed to have ignited the entire void. World Annihilation Orb. Burn it. The flames burned, and the Ancient One over God's divine kingdom was instantly engulfed in a sea of fire. Then it was burned to ashes at a speed that was visible to the naked eye. For a high god's divine kingdom to be incinerated by these flames, one could imagine just how powerful these flames were. However, although the glorious sun divinity's avatar had burned down a high-level god's divine kingdom, he did not look happy at all. The thief did not exist in this divine kingdom. The thief had chosen to sacrifice a high-level god's divine kingdom to deceive him. As for the real body, great supreme divinity, the intruder suddenly accelerated. Although his speed is not fast, he has surpassed me. I'm afraid I can't catch up with him. Your Majesty, Supreme Divinity, I'm only chasing an avatar that is used to deceive people. The core of the avatar is the origin energy of the divine beast Kuan Peng. I've already killed the Kuan Peng avatar. After the glorious sun divinity identified that the one he was chasing was a fake avatar, the other two high-level gods reported the news at the same time. Damn it, catch up with Zatches. This thief stole my treasure. I won't let him go, even if he escapes to the ends of the earth. The glorious sun divinity's eyes flashed with anger. He turned around abruptly and chased after Tsing Hui again. Due to his previous delay, Tsing Hui had left him far behind. He chased for 3 whole months before he could sense Tsing Hui's location again. However, less than 4 days after he sensed Tsing Hui's location, the surrounding environment began to change constantly. The power of Great Tao began to fade away and was replaced by the increasingly dense chaotic Yuan Qi. The grayish-black chaotic Yuan Qi, which seemed to contain infinite profound meaning of life and death, seeped in from the direction they were heading. It eroded the divine energy and divine consciousness of the glorious sun divinity's avatar, causing the consumption of the avatar to increase exponentially. The chaotic void. The thief's escape destination is the chaotic void. Damn it, half a month ago, I faintly guessed the direction he was escaping to, but I couldn't believe it. After all, the chaotic void is a land of death for us. Even a powerful expert can only survive for a few hundred years in the chaotic void. But I didn't expect. The glorious sun divinity looked at the environment that had suddenly changed, and his heart was filled with grievances. After a moment, a chilling light flashed in his eyes. So what if it's the chaotic void? A powerful expert can only survive for a few hundred years in the chaotic void under normal circumstances. If a fierce battle consumes a lot of energy, this time will be reduced exponentially to 40 years, 30 years, or even 20 years. I'll chase you for 20 years in the chaotic void and exhaust your energy. I'll let you enter the chaotic void alive, but you won't be able to return alive. The glorious sun divinity who had rushed into the chaotic void, did not reduce his speed. Instead, he chased even faster. Fortunately, Tsing Hui, who was a creature of the chaotic void, could travel much faster in the chaotic void. In addition, the glorious sun divinity had an innate advantage in the chaotic void. Therefore, the glorious sun divinity could not catch up with him. The 5 powerful experts, who were equivalent to powerful experts, chased each other in the chaotic void. Soon, 20 years had passed. During these 20 years, the 5 of them had long escaped into the depths of the chaotic void. Even though the glorious sun divinity had the master of gods as his backer, he could not guarantee that he could return safely from the chaotic void. Therefore, he had to stop. He concealed his weary expression and pretended to be gloating. I don't believe that he can come back alive after going so far into the chaotic void. We are in charge of the chase and have exhausted our energy to the limit, let alone this little thief who is being chased by us. Even if he can find a way back, he will die on the way back due to excessive energy consumption. That's right. This little thief will die for sure. The high god who came with the glorious sun divinity hastily agreed. They were different from the glorious sun divinity. Perhaps the glorious sun divinity still had some energy left, but these high gods had truly reached their limits. They did not know whether the little thief would survive or not, but the 3 of them would most likely die on the way back. The glorious sun divinity nodded. He was still extremely dissatisfied that he had not killed Tsing Hui with his own hands. However, considering that Tsing Hui had most likely died after escaping into the depths of the chaotic void, he slightly eased his anger. All right, let's go back. Since he's already a dead man, there's no need to fuss over it. Chapter 903. I finally gave up. Tsing Hui breathed a sigh of relief, as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders when the glorious sun divinity and the other 3 turned to leave. I'm afraid I'll be lost in the void of chaos if I continue to chase after them. Fortunately, the Lord of Chaos is huge enough to guide me back to the void of chaos like a bright light in the fog. If it weren't for the Lord of Chaos, I don't know how long it would take for me to return safely. If I were to go in the wrong direction, I would be lost in the void of chaos forever. Although chaos beings had adapted to the special environment of the void of chaos, Tsing Hui, a chaos being who had yet to fully transform, was just too insignificant in the boundless void of chaos. Traveling in the void of chaos was like a human being who had the ability to survive in space, saying that he would walk from one star to another. It was easy to imagine the consequences of getting lost in such a vast environment. I have to find the path I took when I came here as soon as possible. Tsing Hui thought. He did not want to waste a moment and turned to return. However, after flying for less than half a month, Tsing Hui's body suddenly stopped, as he had never ventured so deep into the void of chaos. If he wanted to return, he would have to return to the Lord of God's domain by following the path he took. Even though he could slightly change his direction and enter the Lord of God's domain, if the glorious sun divinity wanted to keep an eye on him and had placed spies in an extremely vast area, there was a small probability that he would be discovered when he entered the Lord of God's domain. Although the probability was not high, if he were to be discovered, he would be in great trouble. With this thought in mind, Tsing Hui slightly slowed down. The void of chaos is filled with endless dangers for high gods like the glorious sun divinity. But for me, a chaos being, it's much less dangerous. As long as I'm not targeted by great and terrifying beings like the evil gods and the Lord of Gods, the void of chaos is the most suitable place for me to cultivate. In that case, why don't I enter the Lord of God's domain after completing the cultivation of the second layer of the Tao Disc? On the one hand, I can wear down the glorious sun divinity's patience and avoid being blocked by him. On the other hand, once I complete the second layer of the Tao Disc, even if I encounter the glorious sun divinity again, I won't be completely helpless. With this thought in mind, Tsing Hui flew unhurriedly along the path he took while concentrating his attention on the fortune jade. Having been supplemented by the Tao Disc, The fortune jade was clearly more mysterious than before. It was overflowing with light, and if a cultivator from the immortal Tao civilization were to catch a glimpse of the Tao disc's power, it would be enough for them to enter a state of epiphany and develop a new understanding of the Tao disc. They could even use this understanding as a foundation to break through and ascend to a higher realm. Of the 906 Tao discourses, 76 are complete, while the rest are fragmented. The Lord of Gods is truly the Lord of Gods. If I were to collect these Tao discourses, who knows how many years it would take me. But not only did the Lord of Gods collect them all, he didn't hesitate to abandon them when he realized that they were of no use to him. Tsing Hui's gaze focused on the Tao disc, and he sighed inwardly. The supreme ruler of a star naturally wouldn't care for 1 or 2 tons of gold, but if it were distributed to a single person, that person would become a billionaire overnight. Tsing Hui's gaze paused on the Tao disc, and he eliminated all of the fragmented ones. Soon, he focused on the complete ones. 76 Tao discourses. They were all different. Tsing Hui's gaze carefully comprehended the 76 Tao discourses. Soon, however, he frowned. These Tao discourses, they're all relatively simple Tao discourses. Although they're relatively easy to cultivate, they don't have any offensive effects. Tsing Hui looked at the Tao discourses and felt a little troubled. Although he could understand that the Tao discourses that were good at attacking would have been torn apart by the invading Lord of Gods, the Lord of Chaos, and the Lord of Time. Those that could survive would definitely be marginal Tao discourses. However, the fact that these Tao discourses were so weak still made him hesitate. If he really combined these Tao discourses with the unification Great Tao to simulate an immortal Tao civilization, the development of the world might be very stable and rapid, but killing would definitely be its greatest drawback. Tsing Hui was silent for a moment. He had no choice but to turn his gaze to the fragmented Tao discourses. Among the fragmented Tao discourses, there were naturally many that were good at killing. However, the more powerful a Tao discourses was, the more damaged they were. Some of the Tao discourses that were slightly better than Tsing Hui's eyes were almost completely destroyed. Even if he had the creation divine jade, he would still have to pay a huge price to repair them. As for the Tao discourses that did not even have any remaining fragmented Tao discourses, even the creation divine jade was powerless to repair them. The most outstanding Tao discourses among these Tao discourses is called the evil discourses. It's a Tao discourses derived from the Thunder Great Tao and the Heavenly Punishment Great Tao. Among the many Tao discourses, it's already a third-tier Tao discourses. However, this is already the best Tao discourses I can find. Tsing Hui stared at these Tao discourses. Through them, he could already understand the devastation of the war in the immortal Tao civilization. Almost all the Tao discourses related to attacking had been destroyed. It was equivalent to a country's military factories and barracks being completely destroyed. Although the country's farms, fishing grounds, and pastures remained intact, there was still no hope of resistance. Could it be that I can only choose 49 complete Great Taos at will and complete the cultivation of the second level of the Great Tao disc? Tsing Hui was a little unwilling. His attitude did not allow him to treat the cultivation path he was about to embark on so negatively. With his unwillingness, Tsing Hui's gaze once again swept across these fragmented Tao discourses. After a moment, somewhat familiar Tao discourses appeared in front of him. The Tao of murderous intent. As this secondary Tao discourses entered Tsing Hui's eyes, a flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in his mind. Wait a minute. A Tao discourses of extremely high quality. I might not have them. Tsing Hui's mind suddenly focused on the supreme sword technique he had previously obtained from the Void Sword Pavilion. It was a swordsmanship that he called the Immortal Slashing Tao Sword Technique. This swordsmanship, or the 4 supreme swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion, was condensed from 4 fragmented Tao discourses. Because of this, the Divine Creation Jade could use these swordsmanships as the foundation to deduce swordsmanships, such as the Immortal Slashing Sword Chi. Since the divine creation jade could deduce the immortal slashing sword chi based on those swordsmanships, it was possible that it could rededuce the four fragmented Tao discourses through those four swordsmanships. It should be known that these Tao discourses were powerful enough to catch the eye of the Master of Chaos and condense them into supreme swordsmanships. If he could really deduce these four Tao discourses, the drawbacks of the lack of offensive power of the 49 Tao discourses would be completely made up. Very well, according to this idea, I'll leave 4 positions for the 4 supreme swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion. As for the other Tao discourses, I'll choose the best ones and return them to their original positions. As for those fragmented Tao discourses, as long as the grade is high enough, I can also use the Divine Creation Jade to complete them. Anyway, over the years, the Divine Creation Jade has accumulated a large number of Tao discourses. If I don't intend to upgrade the level of the Son of Chaos, I can use them all to deduce those fragmented Tao discourses. Thinking of this, Sing Hui's cultivation path in front of him suddenly became clear. One by one, the Tao discourses were selected by him. Like satellites, they surrounded the core of the great path of unification, full of a natural and harmonious beauty. As many Tao discourses surrounded it, countless streams of light dissipated from these Tao discourses. Under the guidance of the great path of unification, wonderful changes began to take place. However, because the 49 Tao discourses were not complete, these changes did not reveal their final form, even though they were in the process of being nurtured. The world is derived from these Tao discourses. Sing Hui looked at the perfect change in front of him and muttered to himself. At this time, he could not wait to perfect the last 4 Tao discourses so that he could witness the final form of these 50 Tao discourses as soon as possible. Void Sword Pavilion. Sing Hui took a deep breath and looked at the territory of the Master of Gods. Without completing the evolution of the virtual immortal Tao civilization world, his great path dis technique could not be considered to have reached the 2nd level. Naturally, he was inferior to the glorious Sun Divinity, who was a supreme, ultimate God. It was very likely that the glorious Sun Divinity was waiting for his return in the territory of the Master of Gods. The closer I am to success, the more I can't be careless, Sing Hui said. Then, he turned slightly, corrected his direction, and quickly shuttled through the chaotic void. He planned to spend hundreds and thousands of years avoiding the sealed area that the glorious Sun Divinity might form. Although it would take a lot of time, at least he did not have to worry about being in danger. With this thought, Sing Hui quickly shuttled through the area close to the territory of the Master of Gods. Ordinary powerful people who fell into the chaotic void and were eroded by chaotic vitality might not be able to survive for hundreds of years. However, as a chaotic life form, even if he had not really grown up, Sing Hui could still live in the chaotic void like a fish in water. Now, compared to an adult chaotic life form, his shuttling speed was just a lot slower. In addition, the restrictive effect of the chaotic void environment on him no longer existed. Under such circumstances, he would not be affected even if he lived in the chaotic void for tens of thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. Time flew by. 600 years passed in the blink of an eye. After spending 600 years, Sing Hui went far away from the territory that the glorious Sun Divinity might seal, and then transformed into a divine spirit again and plunged into the territory of the Master of Gods. After arriving at the territory of the Master of Gods, he did not dare to delay any longer. With the help of the teleportation formation in the territory of the Master of Gods, he quickly arrived at the front line and then went through the front line to the territory of the Master of Chaos. After hurrying for a while, when he reappeared in the divine wilderness great world, 618 years had passed. Chapter 904. I'm only missing 4 great path precepts that specialize in killing. If the power of those 4 great path precepts is not satisfactory, the immortal civilization world I simulated will be reduced to a deformed world that is only stable and not aggressive. Tsing Hui sensed the virtual immortal civilization world that he had constructed based on the creation jade and the unification great path, and cast his eyes on the divine wilderness great world. The divine wilderness great world had not changed much compared to hundreds of years ago. The great path imprint that he and Lord of Water Qing Shui had left here was still the same as before, deterring any cultivator who had designs on the divine wilderness great world. Due to the geographical location, there were no traces of powerful cultivators around the divine wilderness great world. The forces around the dominators were mainly dominators who had cultivated the immemorial sacred body. Although the difference between dominators and powerful cultivators was not as obvious as that between supreme beings and dominators, it was still easy for a powerful cultivator to kill a dominator. It was just like how a cultivator of the fourth level of the Saint Realm who had cultivated magical powers could kill a cultivator of the Golden Elixir Realm. Under such circumstances, knowing that the divine wilderness great world had the protection of two powerful cultivators, even if those dominators knew that there were rich profits in the divine wilderness great world, they still did not dare to have any designs on it. Whoosh! Tsing Hui stepped into the void and quickly entered the divine wilderness great world. Tsing Hui, who was busy completing the second step of the Great Path Disc, did not want to waste any more time. He directly found the representative of the Void Sword Pavilion in the divine wilderness great world, Sword Master Qing Kong. The moment she learned that Tsing Hui had returned, Sword Master Qing Kong had already greeted him and saluted, "Greetings to Sword God Tsing Hui. Sword Master Qing Kong, I need to see the highest leaders of the Void Sword Pavilion and make a deal with them. See the highest leaders of the Void Sword Pavilion." Sword Master Qing Kong was slightly startled, and then hurriedly said, "Of course, if Sword God Tsing Hui has any requests, the four great sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion will immediately come to the divine wilderness great world to visit. No need. I'll go to the Void Sword Pavilion. It just so happens that I've never been to the Void Sword Pavilion. I'll take this opportunity to learn about the real appearance of the Void Sword Pavilion." The Sword Master of Clear Sky bowed in a hurry. "If the Green Ruin Sword God is willing to pay a visit to our Void Sword Pavilion, we'll be more than happy to do so. I'll send a message to the upper echelon of our pavilion right now, so that they can make the necessary preparations for your arrival." "Thank you for your trouble. Go and make the arrangements. I'll go take a look at the Hunyuan Sword Sect. We'll set off in 3 days." "Yes, Lord Sword God." Tsing Hui nodded and arrived at the Hunyuan Sword Sect in a flash. Although the four supreme swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion were precious, Tsing Hui believed that he had a way to persuade him. As long as he obtained these four swordsmanship and deduced and perfected the great Tao law behind these four swordsmanship, he would be able to completely complete the second level of the Great Tao Plate. At that time, while his cultivation increased, he would also face the cultivation of the last level of the Great Tao Plate. This level was somewhat similar to the cultivators of the Great Development Gate. They needed to gather the power of the 12 divine beasts to finally attack the Source Plate. The last time he left the divine wilderness great world, he had already set up a method to try it on the 12 disciples. Now, he was going to the Hunyuan Sword Sect to check on the cultivation of these 12 disciples. Supreme Elder. Tsing Hui's return to the Hunyuan Sword Sect naturally caused a sensation in the Hunyuan Sword Sect. Not long after, the higher-ups of the Hunyuan Sword Sect, except for esteemed Zhu Zhao who was in seclusion, had all come to Tsing Hui. Thanks to the unreserved support of the Void Sword Pavilion and the abundant resources left behind by the Qing ruins, the Hunyuan Sword Sect had given birth to another 2 experts who had reached world creation with a thought in the past few centuries. One was naturally esteemed Zongjin, who had the best relationship with Tsing Hui, and the other was Long Rainbow Sword Master, who could be called by Shuang's master. In addition to these 2 people, cultivators of the traversing realm had also sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. Now, there were already hundreds of people, and the remaining cultivators who had cultivated the divine true body had reached nearly 10,000 people. The Hunyuan Sword Sect had officially become a top sect that ruled the world. At this point, if the Hunyuan sword sect was not in a special world with rich resources like the divine wilderness great world, but in an ordinary low-energy world, it was not impossible for them to rule the entire world. Xing Hui was slightly satisfied with the speed of development of the Hunyuan sword sect. After chatting with them for a while, he had already summoned the Qi Yuan sword spirit and the 12 disciples, who he had left here to learn from Zhiyun. After more than 600 years, Zhiyun's deduction of the ultimate sword Dao had become more complete. However, due to Qing Su's guidance on the path of attaining a fortune god artifact with his body, his rate of cultivation slowed down slightly. Even though he had still grown by a level, reaching a level where he was on par with any peak conqueror expert, he was still a level away from reaching the peak of the Hunyuan sword sect, world creation with a thought. On the other hand, after the Qi Yuan sword spirit had completely comprehended the ultimate sword Dao created by Zhiyun, he already had the power to refine a top divine artifact. Next, he only needed to wait for Xing Hui to prepare a creation artifact for him, and he would be able to spend a long time devouring that creation artifact, so that he would have the power not inferior to a creation artifact. After understanding the growth of the Qi Yuan sword spirit, Xing Hui was extremely satisfied. With a smile on his face, he said, "Qi Yuan, follow me for the next period of time. I will find a way to find a creation artifact for you to help you break through." "Thank you, Father." The Qi Yuan sword spirit responded happily. He turned into a divine sword and fell into Xing Hui's hand. Immediately after, Xing Hui's gaze fell on Zhiyun. With a wave of his hand, several divine weapons appeared in his hand. "These are all paragon artifacts. You are different from the Qi Yuan sword spirit. The Qi Yuan sword spirit cultivates according to my great Dao law. As long as I can continue to grow and give him enough help, his realm will continue to increase. It won't be long before I can raise his realm to a level that is not inferior to that of a great divine master. At that time, he can naturally slowly try to devour and refine a creation artifact. But after all, you're only a human, and your realm is limited. It is more suitable for you to evolve in the direction of a paragon artifact. These paragon artifacts are all yours. I hope you can find one that suits you among these paragon artifacts. Zhiyun's achievements today are all thanks to Master. Don't worry, I will definitely not disappoint you." Xing Hui nodded in satisfaction. After indicating for him to leave, his gaze passed through the crowd and landed on the remaining 12 disciples. Although Xing Hui had planted great Dao seeds in these 12 disciples and spared no effort in nurturing them, there was still an extremely serious polarization in just a few hundred years. The one with the highest cultivation had already caught up with Zhiyun and reached a level that was not inferior to the traversal realm. As for the one with the lowest cultivation, he had not even reached the prominent divine realm. If it were not for the fact that he had refined many heavenly treasures to extend his life, he would probably already be facing the problem of his lifespan running out. Xing Hui's gaze swept across the 12 disciples one by one. He was rather satisfied with those who had cultivated to the divine true body realm and the traversal realm. After understanding their cultivation progress and a series of cultivation methods, he also gave some guesses and pointers. But for that disciple who was only at the green netherworld realm and the other golden core realm disciples, he frowned. Seeing this scene, the disciples lowered their heads at the same time, their expressions filled with guilt. "We have failed Master's teachings. Please punish us, Master." The 5 disciples who were not at the divine realm knelt down at the same time. Xing Hui's gaze landed on the 5 disciples. These 5 disciples cultivated the divine beast bloodlines of Yueying, Bai Qi, Ouroboros, giant turtle, and blood mosquito. What they had in common was that these 5 great Daos had been completely lost, which meant that their divine beasts had all fallen. Currently, there were only 6.5 great Dao laws left in the territory of the Master of Chaos. They were the Torch Dragon, Golden Crow, Kuan Peng, Primal Chaos, Qilin, Tong Tian, and Yujia. It was said that Yujia had fallen once, and the current Yujia was not the real divine beast Yujia. If one had to rank these divine beast bloodlines, they would be Kuan Peng, Golden Crow, Primal Chaos, Qilin, Torch Dragon, Tong Tian, and half of the 6.5 Yujia. From these disciples, we could also see that their cultivation levels were basically divided in this order. Among the 7 disciples, Tong Tian and Yujia were only at the profound void stage and domain stage respectively, which was the second and first level of the divine realm. There's nothing wrong with my guess. As the great Tao of chaos, the great Tao of unity has an extremely high compatibility effect with other laws. It's like the ancient saying that 2 tigers cannot live on one mountain, but it doesn't mean that 1 tiger and 1 bear can't live on the same mountain. What truly restricts their growth is the great Tao itself. Realizing this, Xinghui felt a headache coming on. The bloodlines of Tong Tian and Yu Jia were slightly better. Although they were extremely rare, they still existed. However, the top divine beasts like Ying, Bai Qi, Ouroboros, Giant Turtle, and Blood Mosquito were said to have fallen long ago. Their true bodies were scattered into countless great Tao fragments. These great Tao fragments were obtained by many cultivators, forming a series of cultivators similar to the Great Development Gate. Currently, the Gate Master with the highest cultivation base in the Great Development Gate only cultivated 8 types of Great Tao. The short time was one of the problems. Another problem was that they couldn't obtain Great Tao fragments from the Kuanpeng, Golden Crow, Primal Chaos, Qilin, and Torch Dragon. After all, Great Tao fragments were an opportunity for those divine beasts to become chaos creatures in the future. Even if a divine beast died, there would only be a few hundred fragments left on its body. It could be seen how precious Great Tao fragments were. Asking a living divine beast to offer up its Great Tao fragments was simply equivalent to killing a beast and extracting its blood. This was absolutely not something that those divine beasts would allow. However, the Great Tao fragments of the 12 divine beasts were an unavoidable part of the Great Tao plate's 3rd level cultivation. I need the complete Great Tao fragments of the 12 divine beasts. The Gate Master and Elders of the Great Development Gate also need them. The 12 divine beasts are different from the true evil gods and chaos creatures. Although they are countless times stronger than powerful experts, they can't be considered as true chaos creatures or evil gods. Perhaps one day, I can join forces with the top experts of the Great Development Gate and try to kill those divine beasts. Even if we can't kill them, as long as we can kill enough origin energy to condense Great Tao fragments, our goal will be completed. Xinghui had a plan in mind. However, before carrying out this plan, he had to first complete the 2nd level of the Great Tao plate. While Xinghui stayed in the Origin Sword sect and studied the experiences of several disciples who fused the Great Tao of Unity with the Great Tao of Divine Beasts, Immortal Emperor Songhai, who was stationed in the Divine Wilderness Great World, found Xinghui. Lord Xinghui, the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures, sent a message to you 300 years ago. He asked you to go to the Jade Dragon soaring victorious sky. Chapter 905. Important Things? What important things? Xinghui glanced in the direction of the Void Sword Pavilion. Now, the most important thing for him was undoubtedly to go to the Void Sword Pavilion and complete the transaction with them. He wanted to obtain the 4 supreme swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion and deduce the complete 49 dermis. Then, he could simulate the immortal Tao civilization world with the Fortune Jade as the foundation. Well, Lord of Plentiful Treasures didn't tell me the specifics. I just vaguely heard him mention that it seems to have something to do with a statue. A statue, Xinghui frowned. Could it be the blood-colored statue with the evil god residing in his body? But now that the 2nd level of the Great Tao Disc was about to be completed, he really didn't want to be distracted by other things. Lord of Plentiful Treasures had waited for 300 years anyway, so he didn't need to worry about it. He said directly, I have made an agreement with the Clear Sky Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion. I need to go to the Void Sword Pavilion. I can return in a year or 10 years. At that time, I will go to the soaring Jade Dragon sky to visit Lord of Plentiful Treasures. Immortal Emperor Songhai, please convey the message for me." Hearing this, immortal Emperor Songhai hesitated for a moment and said, "Well, I will tell the truth to the Lord of Heaven." Tsing nodded. 3 days passed quickly. On the third day, Tsing met up with the clear sky swordmaster again. Without any delay, the two quickly entered the Zhun central world through the transmission formation. Then, they used the transmission formation of the Zhun central world to pass through one world after another. They basically chose the kind of large world that didn't seal itself and had an external transmission formation. Using the transmission formation to travel, the effect was extraordinary. In addition, he slightly used his privilege as a great medium along the way, so the speed was extremely fast. In less than 4 months, the two had already appeared in the Void World where the Void Sword Pavilion was located. As soon as they arrived in the Void World, the Liha Swordmaster, who had received the news early, had already led several other swordmasters of the Void Sword Pavilion to wait at the transmission formation. When Tsing walked out of the transmission formation, he saw several swordmasters and hundreds of high-level members of the Void Sword Pavilion welcoming him. "Sword God Tsing, welcome to our great Void World." The Liha Swordmaster stepped forward on behalf of the Void Sword Pavilion and greeted him warmly. "Sorry to disturb you, Swordmaster of Liha." Tsing nodded slightly. "What's there to disturb? We're happy that Sword God Tsing is willing to visit our Void Sword Pavilion. Come on, Sword God Tsing, please come in. I'll introduce you to the other sword masters of our Void Sword Pavilion." As the Liha Swordmaster spoke, he waved his hand and drew out the other sword masters behind him. These two sword masters are the other two most powerful sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion. They're the Red Slaughter Swordmaster and the Heavenly Cave Swordmaster. They are in charge of the Demon Slayer Sword and the Heaven Sealing Sword Technique. They are the inheritors of the Demon Slayer Sword Technique and the Heaven Sealing Sword Technique. Demon Slayer Swordmaster, Sky Sealing Swordmaster. The main purpose of Tsing Hui's visit this time was to cooperate with the 4 most powerful swordmasters of the Void Sword Pavilion. Naturally, he was quite polite to the other 2 swordmasters. And this is the Swordmaster of the Dragon Slayer Sword. The Calamity Swordmaster, who wields the Evil Slayer Sword, has been relieved of his position as the Swordmaster of the Evil Slayer Sword because of his incompetence in the Divine Wilderness world. He has entered the back mountain of our Void Sword Pavilion to reflect on his mistakes. The one who currently wields the Evil Slayer Sword and cultivates the Evil Slayer Sword technique is the new Swordmaster of the Dragon Slayer Sword. Greetings to Sword God Tsing. The Swordmaster of the Dragon Slayer Sword, who was introduced, hurriedly stepped forward and saluted. When Tsing saw this, he understood why the Void Sword Pavilion had deprived the Swordmaster of the Calamity Sword of his position as the Evil Slayer Swordmaster. The purpose was to give him an explanation. Even though he did not pursue the responsibility of the Master of the Tsang Tribulation Sword of the Void Sword Pavilion, the status of the Qing ruins was no longer ordinary. They must have already investigated the identity of the members of the Great Development Sect. Under these circumstances, even if he did not say anything, the Void Sword Pavilion was forced to give a reasonable explanation for the unpleasant incident that happened to the Master of the Tsang Tribulation Sword in the past in order to curry favor with him. Thinking of this, Tsing Hui's face showed a slight smile. "Sword Master of the Dragon Slayer Sword, it seems that I have some fate with the Sword Master of the Dragon Slayer Sword. When I was still in the Longevity Realm, I also had an identity and was in charge of an island. I was called the Dragon Slayer Island Master, which is quite similar to the title of the Sword Master." The Sword Master of the Dragon Slayer Sword received the goodwill of Tsing Hui, and the smile on his face became more sincere. "Is that so? I didn't expect that I would have such an honor to have a title similar to Tsing Hui's Sword God. If there is a chance in the future, I would like to visit the island that Sword God Tsing Hui mentioned. I hope that Sword God Tsing Hui will allow me. Of course, our Hunyuan Sword Sect and the Void Sword Pavilion are the best allies. If the Sword Master of the Dragon Slayer Sword wants to visit our Divine Wilderness Great World, our Hunyuan Sword Sect, and even the entire Divine Wilderness Great World will welcome you at any time," Tsing Hui said. Next, he continued to exchange greetings with several powerful swordsmanship masters of the Void Sword Pavilion. After a while, at the request of Tsing Hui, they had already arrived above the mountain, where the sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion were training and competing. This mountain was called a mountain, but in fact, it was a giant sword that had been tempered thousands of times. It was just that the giant sword was so big that it had formed a mountain range over time under the precipitation of time, which made it look like a mountain range. In fact, due to the sturdiness of the giant sword, it was not easy for even a sword master level expert to cause too much damage to the giant sword. This was also the reason why the sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion chose this place as the training ground. Everyone, I have specially come to visit the Void Sword Pavilion this time. As the sword master of the Clear Sky Sword Sect said, I have come for a deal. But before talking about the deal, please take a look at my swordsmanship first. After arriving here, Tsing Hui did not waste any more words and went straight to the point. Under the cautious gazes of the Liha Sword Master, the Dragon-Slaying Sword Master, the Crimson Slaughter Sword Master, and the Heavenly Abode Sword Master, Tsing Hui directly displayed the immortal eliminating Sword Chi. Streaks of sword light crisscrossed in the void and quickly formed a Dao sealing domain, causing the great Dao to no longer exist in this void. As he practiced to the end, he completed the demonstration of the complete form of the immortal eliminating Sword Chi and created a special domain that completely sealed off the great Dao law. This sealing power not only sealed supreme experts at the first level of the chaotic realm, but also those great divines who had transformed their bodies into the great Dao. Once their great Dao power spread out, it would be quickly sealed, making it difficult for these great divines to exert even half of their battle strength. This swordsmanship, the four sword masters felt the power of this swordsmanship and were all shocked. Among them, the Liha Sword Master, who was the inheritor of the immortal eliminating sword technique, was even more surprised when he stared at the swordsmanship that Tsing Hui had performed. In this swordsmanship, he could vaguely see the shadow of the immortal eliminating sword technique. However, compared to the immortal eliminating sword technique that they cultivated, Tsing Hui's swordsmanship was undoubtedly more powerful. Does the Liha Sword Master feel that this swordsmanship is familiar? Tsing Hui noticed the strange expression on the Liha Sword Master's face and asked with a smile. The Liha Sword Master looked a little embarrassed. After hesitating for a moment, he still voiced his doubts. To be honest, I do feel that this swordsmanship that Sword God Tsing Hui performed is somewhat familiar. However, after looking at it carefully, I realized that I was overthinking. This swordsmanship of Sword God Tsing Hui is much more powerful than I imagined. Does the Liha Sword Master want to know the name of this swordsmanship? Name? Please tell me, Sword God Tsing Hui. Tsing Hui looked at the Liha Sword Master and said meaningfully, I call this swordsmanship the immortal eliminating Sword Chi. You've seen its power when it's cultivated to perfection. It can almost seal off 50% of a great medium's battle strength. A great medium whose battle strength is sealed by 50%, I'm afraid that even a peak dominator can cause harm to the great medium. Immortal eliminating Sword Chi? The Liha Sword Master's expression suddenly changed. He knew that his guess had been confirmed. For a moment, the Liha Sword Master's face could not help but show anger. If it were not for the fact that Tsing Hui was a great medium, he would have exploded at this moment. Sword God Tsing Hui, what you're doing, Liha Sword Master, please calm down. I didn't steal the strongest swordsmanship of your Void Sword Pavilion. It's just that I once saw you use the immortal slashing sword technique, and then I deduced it and perfected it to a more perfect form. You saw me use the immortal eliminating sword technique and deduced it to a more perfect form. The Liha Sword Master frowned. If the one who spoke was not Tsing Hui, who was a great medium, he naturally would not care. However, in the face of Tsing Hui, who had joined the Great Development Gate and could be considered a powerhouse among the great medium, he had to restrain his temper. That's right. Otherwise, why will my swordsmanship be more powerful than your immortal eliminating sword technique? Tsing Hui said lightly. The immortal eliminating sword Qi was more powerful and more perfect than the immortal eliminating sword technique. This was the best persuasion effect. Even if the Liha sword master did not dare to believe it, he still did not know how to refute. But the immortal eliminating sword technique is the most powerful swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion. You have never received the inheritance of the Void Sword Pavilion, so how could you surpass it in such a short time? Why not? Liha Sword Master, if you intend to look at me with ordinary eyes, then you are gravely mistaken. Don't forget, I cultivated from the level of a mortal to the level of a great medium. How long did it take? Xing Hui said lightly, his expression full of arrogance. 1,000 years. This phrase suddenly appeared in the mind of the Liha Swordmaster. For a moment, he was speechless. Cultivating to the level of a great medium in 1,000 years. This kind of incredible thing had happened, let alone the small matter of him secretly learning the most powerful swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion and surpassing it. After a while, the Liha Sword Master laughed helplessly. I have never doubted the talent of Sword God Xing Hui. I wonder what is the purpose of Sword God Xing Hui demonstrating the swordsmanship in front of me this time? Please speak frankly. Well, since the Liha Sword Master is so straightforward, then I will not beat around the bush. I intend to impart the immortal eliminating sword Qi to the Void Sword Pavilion for free. The eyes of the Liha Sword Master suddenly lit up. Sword God Xing Hui, are you serious? Yes. Xing Hui nodded, but there's another thing that I have some selfish motives for. Listen to it and think about it after listening. The foremost powerful swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion can be formed into a sword formation. Only when the sword formation is formed can it exert its greatest power. If you learn the new immortal eliminating sword Qi, the run-in of the sword formation will be a problem. Therefore, if the Liha Sword Master and the other Sword Masters trust me, why not pass the next 3 swordsmanships to me? I can assure you that I will deduce these 3 swordsmanships and finally return to you 3 swordsmanships that are more powerful than all the swordsmanships you have now. Chapter 906. The Other 3 Swordsmanship. Xing Hui's proposal made the remaining 3 sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion quite angry. However, because of Xing Hui's extraordinary identity and the fact that he used his own actions to prove his ability to everyone, the sword masters quickly calmed down after being angry for a moment. The man in front of them, he was a terrifying existence who had cultivated for thousands of years to become a great divine, based on the fact that he could create the more powerful, immortal eliminating sword Qi just by observing the swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion. If he really wanted to steal the swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion, they really had no way to stop him. After all, the 4 supreme swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion had been used more than once in front of outsiders. The other party could easily find the relevant information about the 4 supreme swordsmanship. What made them even more speechless was that the other party could not only get his swordsmanship, but also rely on these swordsmanship to create more powerful swordsmanship. In this way, it would be meaningless for the Void Sword Pavilion to hold on to these 4 supreme swordsmanship. Instead of this, it would be better to hand over these swordsmanship. In this way, they could continue to be friends with this great divine with a promising future, and they could also improve the power of the supreme swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion to a higher level. In the past, the power of the 4 swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion, even if the 4 swords were combined into a sword formation, could only barely resist the attack of a great divine. As for competing with or even defeating a great divine, it was impossible. If every swordsmanship created by Xing Hui could have the power he said, defeating a great divine was no longer an extravagant hope for the 4 sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion. As long as they could defeat a great divine, the status of the Void Sword Pavilion would inevitably soar from now on. By then, thinking of this, the sword masters looked at each other and finally made a decision. In the end, the Liha Sword Master, who was most familiar with Tsing Hui, stepped forward and said in a deep voice, "Since sword god Tsing Hui is so confident about his talent, then we of the Void Sword Pavilion are also happy to accept your request. I have discussed with the dragon-slaying sword master, and we are willing to give the evil god-slaying sword technique to sword god Tsing Hui first. If sword god Tsing Hui can really create a swordsmanship that is more powerful than the evil god-slaying sword technique, we will transfer the remaining 2 swordsmanships to sword god Tsing Hui one by one. In addition, due to the particularity of the 4 most powerful swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion, we hope that sword god Tsing Hui can be registered in the Void Sword Pavilion and become a guest elder of the Void Sword Pavilion." Tsing Hui knew that the Liha sword master was still a little worried. In addition, a guest elder would not be bound by the Void Sword Pavilion, so he nodded slightly. "Okay, I am willing to become a guest elder of the Void Sword Pavilion. Now, please give me the swordsmanships. It will not be long before I pass the improved swordsmanships to the dragon-slaying swordmaster." The Liha sword master nodded. For important people like them, since they had made a promise, they naturally would not easily break it. Then his eyes fell on the dragon-slaying swordmaster, who also stepped forward and said, "Sword god Tsing Hui, the most powerful swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion have always been passed down by word of mouth and cannot be passed down in jade books. Therefore, I am sorry to offend you." After that, he pointed at the space between Tsing Hui's eyebrows. A powerful divine thought suddenly poured down and entered Tsing Hui's mind. For Tsing Hui, this action would put him in danger. However, on the one hand, Tsing Hui believed that the people of the Void Sword Pavilion would not dare to act rashly against him. On the other hand, his confidence as a creature of chaos also gave him enough confidence to withdraw before the dragon-slaying swordmaster had any ill intentions. Fortunately, the people of the Void Sword Pavilion did not really want to fall out with Tsing Hui. What the dragon-slaying swordmaster passed down was really the most powerful swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion. Not long after, this evil god-slaying sword technique was already understood by him. The swordsmanships are mysterious. I need to carefully comprehend it. Everyone, please protect me. As Tsing Hui spoke, he had already closed his eyes and concentrated. Comprehended here? The dragon-slaying swordmaster was slightly startled. "Sword god Tsing Hui, do you want to move to the cultivation room?" However, Tsing Hui, who had already closed his eyes and was deep in thought, did not answer his question. For a moment, several swordmaster-level powerhouses could not help but look at each other. Even if what Tsing Hui was doing now was not creating a swordsmanship, but improving another swordsmanship, the energy and mental effort required during this period was still unimaginable to ordinary people, especially the existence of the 4 most powerful swordsmanships of the Void Sword Pavilion. For countless years, the Void Sword Pavilion had not considered improving these 4 most powerful swordsmanships. During this period, countless people had spent endless energy and time, but no one had succeeded. It seemed that the swordsmanships bestowed by the Master of Chaos had reached the most perfect standard. Even if in the eyes of everyone, Tsing Hui's talent was much higher than any of the swordmasters of the Void Sword Pavilion, it would take at least millions of years to completely improve the evil god-slaying sword technique. No, considering the time Tsing Hui took to improve the celestial slashing sword technique, it would take at least thousands of years. For thousands of years, if he had been cultivating in seclusion here, and the several sword masters had to keep an eye on him, would they still be able to deal with the many affairs of the Void Sword Pavilion? After waiting for more than half a day, the several sword masters saw that Tsing Hui seemed to have really entered the state of cultivation. They looked at each other and silently left the hall. Then the Red Slaughter Sword Master said, "I think Sword God Tsing Hui didn't express his meaning clearly just now. How about we leave first and let the dragon-slaying Sword Master Guard here alone? Anyway, this is the Void Sword Pavilion, and we don't have to worry about anyone affecting Sword God Tsing Hui's cultivation here." I also have the same idea. Although the big and small affairs of the Void Sword Pavilion are discussed by the Sword Masters together, The real decision-making level is still the four of us. If the four of us guard here, I'm afraid the operation of the Void Sword Pavilion will stagnate. The Liha Swordmaster said. Then that's it. The dragon-slaying Swordmaster will guard Sword God Sing Hui and not be disturbed. We'll leave first. The heaven-sealing Swordmaster nodded. Then the Swordmasters turned to leave. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from the room. Swordmasters, you don't have to retreat outside. You can come in. It was Sing Hui. The several Swordmasters looked at each other and stepped into the hall one by one without thinking much. Among them, the Liha Swordmaster hurriedly suggested, Sword God Sing Hui, if you want to improve the evil slaying sword technique, it's better to go to the cultivation room to cultivate. After all, the environment here there's no need to go to the cultivation room anymore. Sing Hui had a faint smile on his face. I've completed the improvement of the evil slaying sword technique. Next, I just need to cultivate it thoroughly. As soon as these words came out, the expressions on the faces of the several sword masters froze at the same time. If the person who spoke was not Sing Hui, who was a great medium, the several sword masters would probably have mocked and ridiculed him. After a while, the Liha sword master suppressed the mocking thoughts in his heart and said as tactfully as possible, Sword God Sing Hui, the evil slaying sword technique is one of the four most powerful sword techniques in the Void Sword Pavilion. For countless years, many of our elders in the Void Sword Pavilion have spent a lot of effort to study and improve it. But even if we spent tens of thousands of years, there's still no way to improve the power of the evil slaying sword technique. Sword God Sing Hui, it's been less than a day since you obtained this sword technique. I think it's better to go to the cultivation room and cultivate in seclusion to comprehend the true essence of the sword technique. What do you think? Sing Hui glanced at the Liha Swordmaster and did not answer. He directly turned to the dragon-slaying Swordmaster and said, Swordmaster, you're the master of the evil-slaying sword technique. Let's see if the new sword technique I've improved has improved its power. As he spoke, his divine thoughts surged, and he directly passed the sword technique to the dragon-slaying Swordmaster. Although the dragon-slaying Swordmaster felt a little helpless and felt that Sing Hui's actions were too childish, in the face of a great medium, he could only be patient and read the new evil-slaying sword technique that he had improved. At the beginning, the dragon-slaying Swordmaster still had a hint of a completed mission, but as he slightly comprehended the mysteries of the sword technique, he was immediately attracted by the many changes in it. Soon, he was completely immersed in it and could not extricate himself. The Liha Swordmaster and the others were still waiting for the dragon-slaying Swordmaster to give Sing Hui a few comments so that he would know the difficulty in retreat. Unexpectedly, after waiting for a while, the dragon-slaying Swordmaster did not make a move. Considering his identity as the Green Ruin Swordmaster, the dragon-slaying Swordmaster might have read through it carefully out of caution, so the Swordmaster of Liha and the others did not rush him. However, after 3 whole days had passed, the Swordmaster of Liha and the others finally ran out of patience. They could not help but call out, The dragon-slaying Swordmaster? How is it? Dragon-slaying Swordmaster? After the Liha Swordmaster repeated this 3 or 4 times, the dragon-slaying Swordmaster suddenly woke up. What? Dragon-slaying Swordmaster, we are asking you, how is the improved sword technique that Sing Hui gave you? Exquisite beyond compare. It's simply exquisite beyond compare. After the dragon-slaying Swordmaster came back to his senses, he could not help but exclaim, I never thought that someone would be able to make such a huge improvement to the evil-slaying sword technique. Compared to the evil-slaying sword technique that Sing Hui gave us, the evil-slaying sword technique that we used before was equivalent to a weakened version. It can't be compared at all. The Liha Swordmaster, Scarlet Slaughter Swordmaster, and Sealing Sky Swordmaster were all stunned. After a while, Sealing Sky Swordmaster said in disbelief, Dragon-slaying Swordmaster, you're not joking, right? Joking. How could I joke about something that could possibly affect the next step of our Void Sword Pavilion? The dragon-slaying Swordmaster shouted loudly and righteously. After a while, he turned to Tsing Hui and looked at him as if he was looking at a monster. I never thought that there would be someone in this world who could improve our evil slaying sword technique to such an extent in less than a day. But now I see it. At this moment, I finally understand why sword god Tsing Hui could become a great divine master in just 1,000 years, while after 100,000 years, we were still stuck at the mixed Yuan holy body stage. The difference between us is too big. The Liha sword master, Scarlet Slaughter sword master, and Sealing Sky sword master were quite familiar with the dragon-slaying sword master. Seeing him like this, they immediately understood that what the dragon-slaying sword master said must be true. Tsing Hui really used less than a day to improve the evil slaying sword technique to such an extent. Moreover, the effect of the improvement must be very shocking. Otherwise, the dragon-slaying sword master would not be so shocked. Thinking of this, the sword masters looked at each other and no longer rejected or dissatisfied. Instead, they stepped forward with a humble face. Sword god Tsing Hui, I'll pass on the demon-slaying sword technique to you right now. Please correct it. This is the Sealing Sky sword technique of our Sealing Sky sword technique. Thank you, sword god Tsing Hui. If there's anything you need help with, please don't hesitate to ask. All the cultivators of our Sealing Sky sword technique will do our best to assist you. Chapter 907. The rest of the process went very smoothly. Tsing Hui spent 3 days improving the other 2 sword arts one by one and gave them to the Heaven Sealing Sword Master and the Crimson Slaughter Sword Master. When the 2 sword masters carefully comprehended the 2 sword arts, they no longer had any doubts about Tsing Hui's ability. The entire Void Sword Pavilion thanked Tsing Hui profusely and made many promises, saying that the Void Sword Pavilion and the Hunyuan sword sect would be friends forever, and so on. Tsing Hui, who had successfully obtained the other 3 supreme sword arts of the Void Sword Pavilion, was very satisfied. He immediately projected the 4 sword arts into the Fortune Jade and began to deduce the 4 sword arts with the help of the Fortune Jade, deriving the great Tao laws represented by the 4 sword arts until these great Tao laws were perfected. These 4 sword techniques were condensed from the 4 great ways of the Immortal Path civilization by the Master of Chaos in the past, passing them on to the founder of the Void Sword Pavilion. The Fortune Jade used the 4 sword techniques to reverse the laws of the great ways they represented, so it did not take too much effort. When Qing Su set off on his return journey to the Divine Wilderness Great World, he had already made some progress on the immortal slashing sword Qi that he had come into contact with the earliest. However, these 4 great Taos seemed to have a certain connection. Before the other 3 great Tao laws were understood, the other great Tao laws seemed to be unable to be completely revealed. If all goes well in 1,000 years, I should be able to deduce all the remaining 3 great Tao laws. At that time, it will be the time for me to smoothly step into the 2nd level of the great Tao disc. Tsing Hui muttered to himself. After arriving at the Divine Wilderness Great World, Tsing Hui intended to seclude himself here for 1,000 years to complete his cultivation. However, considering the Lord of Plentiful Treasure's several summons, he could not let the Lord of Plentiful Treasures wait for another 1,000 years. He could only use the teleportation formation guarded by Immortal Emperor Songhai to teleport back to the Jade Dragon soaring victorious sky of the Immortal Tao civilization. Lord Tsing Hui, the one guarding the teleportation formation in the Jade Dragon soaring victorious sky, was a great all-embracing immortal emperor. Clearly, even though Immortal Emperor Songhai was personally guarding the teleportation formation, they still did not feel at ease. After all, this teleportation formation led directly to the hinterland of the Immortal Tao civilization. Tsing Hui nodded. Is the Lord of Heaven in the Jade Dragon soaring victorious sky? This year is the year of our immortal civilization's famous myriad immortal imperial assembly. The Heavenly Lord is presiding over the relevant matters in the Sacred Palace. Good. Tsing Hui nodded and quickly flew to the Divine Wilderness Great World Immortal Tao Palace. In fact, the myriad immortal imperial assembly was a gathering of the immortal civilization that happened once every 10,000 years. Its main purpose was to exchange resources and intelligence. After all, the immortal civilization was currently weak. If they wanted to become stronger, they had to work together and develop together. If they fought on their own and did not interact with each other, they would be completely wiped out one day, even if the Master of Gods, the Master of Chaos, and the Master of Time did not attack them. When they flew to the Sacred Hall from Green Ruins, they came across many experts of the immortal civilization along the way. Most of them were Grand Unity Immortals, but there would be Grand Firmament Immortals from time to time. Basically, all the experts of the immortal civilization who had been wandering outside had gathered at the Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens in the past year. Lord Xinghui. He followed Qing Su to the Sacred Palace. As soon as he landed, Immortal Emperor Longshang, who had some ties with Qing Su in the past, immediately came up to greet him. "You've returned as well, sir. If the Heavenly Lord knows you've returned, he'll definitely be very happy. I'm here to look for the Lord of Heaven." Oh, Immortal Emperor Longshang didn't know that the Lord of Myriad Treasures had sent a message to Xinghui. The Lord of Heaven has just finished receiving guests from other celestial realms. You should have some free time. I'll take you to see him. As he said that, he had already brought Qing Su to where the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures worked. Qing Su was an existence who stood on equal footing with the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures. Let alone the fact that the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures had just received a group of guests and was still resting. Even if he still had guests, the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures would temporarily set aside his matters to meet Qing Su. Lord of Heaven. Xinghui stepped into the hall and saw the Lord of Myriad Treasures and a Grand Unity Immortal talking about something. When the Lord of Myriad Treasures saw Xinghui step into the hall, a hint of joy appeared on his face. "Xinghui, you're finally here. It's been a few hundred years since you last came. I haven't thanked you properly for defeating God Brilliant for us and solving a huge problem for our immortal Tao civilization." Qing Su nodded slightly. "I was born in my original world, after all. Even though I don't cultivate the cultivation system of the immortal civilization, I can still be regarded as half a member of the immortal civilization. Now that our civilization is under threat, I should naturally take action and do my part. No matter what, I have to thank you on behalf of Jade Dragon Ascending Heaven." As the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures said that, he stood up and bowed towards Qing Su carefully. "Lord of Heaven, there's no need for that. It's my duty. You should have received the message I sent you, right?" The Lord of Myriad Treasures said solemnly before going straight to the main topic. "Yes, that's why I'm here." The Lord of Myriad Treasures nodded and looked at Immortal Emperor Longshang. Immortal Emperor Longshang immediately understood and led everyone else out of the hall before retreating himself and closing the door. At the same time, he activated the formation in the hall that blocked out side prying eyes. The formations of the immortal Tao civilization were several times more powerful than the formations of the primal Chaos Master's lineage. Just this formation, which was used to block divine wills, would prevent the Grand Development Gate's Gate Master and Elders from peeking inside once it was activated. Only after all the formations had been activated did the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures get down to business carefully. At the same time, he placed a Jade Talisman with information before Qing Su. "During this period of time, I've used the power and channels of the immortal civilization to investigate the blood-red statue on you. In the end, I came across an extremely shocking piece of news by coincidence." Xinghui picked up the Jade Talisman and read through it with his consciousness. This news didn't originate from our civilization, but from the Chaos Void, which is fraught with unfathomable dangers. Of course, it's not completely in the Chaos Void, but more specifically, something happened in the Chaos universe where the Lord of Chaos is incarnated. 100,000 years ago, a demon god abandoned his colossal body for a short period of time and condensed all of his essence into a single body to charge into the Lord of Chaos's incarnation. Xinghui was shocked. There's a demon god that's so bold? It's not just one demon god, but an alliance of several. Perhaps the Lord of Gods and the Lord of Time were involved as well. The direct result of the battle was that more than half of the 12 divine beasts were killed, and the remaining divine beasts were greatly weakened. If that wasn't the case, the 12 divine beasts would have been able to break through and become chaos beings by now, instead of being stuck between chaos and ordinary life. You mean to say that the evil god in the blood-colored statue on my body is the same evil god that killed the 12 divine beasts inside the main body of chaos? That's right. The Lord of Chaos wanted to condense the power of the 12 divine beasts to recreate the body of the ancestral plate. How could those who were banished by the Lord of Chaos and harbored resentment watch him succeed? At the critical moment, they broke into the body of the Master of Chaos and killed more than half of the 12 divine beasts that were about to mature. They stole the great Tao principles from them and took the risk to replace the 12 divine beasts and become the eternal plate. However, before they could kill and devour the 12 divine beasts, the Master of Chaos had already reacted. In a thunderous rage, the evil gods that invaded his body were either killed or injured. Only one or two escaped into the depths of the chaos void, or hid in the body of the Master of Chaos, or even in his territory, concealing their presence. The Lord of Myriad Treasures paused for a moment at that. The reason why I'm guessing that not all evil gods have fled to the chaos void is because the Lord of Chaos was furious over this matter. He ordered everyone in his domain to search for the evil god hidden within his own body and domain. You're saying that the blood-colored statue in my hand might be the hidden evil god? And Sing Hui's breathing quickened. The true body of the demon god. Yes, the Lord of Myriad Treasures nodded heavily. The reason the Lord of Chaos allowed his chaos verse to be invaded was mainly because he didn't believe that any demon god would dare to risk abandoning his own chaos verse and condense all of his life imprints to form a true body. That's why those demon gods succeeded. After all, a truly mature chaos life form or creation life form is almost equivalent to an immortal existence. As long as they remain cautious, no one can kill them. But once they leave their chaos verse and enter someone else's chaos verse, they'll truly die if they're killed. It's just like how no one would believe that the king of an enemy country would willingly turn into an assassin to assassinate the king of his own country, China. The true body of the demon god. Sing Hui immediately understood the significance of the crimson statue in his hand. Is this information of yours true? It's just a guess. After all, even I find this matter a little hard to believe. The Lord of Myriad Treasures said. In truth, Sing Hui already believed the Lord of Myriad Treasures' words. In fact, he more or less had some guesses about the 2 pieces of fortune jade that had appeared in the divine wilderness great world. One of the pieces of fortune jade had come from the ancient god Jun, who had fought with his back to the wall, but had still been defeated. The other piece originally belonged to the Lord of Chaos, but because the demon god had invaded the Lord of Chaos primal chaos universe, he had stolen it and hid in the divine wilderness great world. It was because the Lord of Chaos had lost the pieces of fortune jade that the Lord of Chaos was furious and frantically searched for the whereabouts of the demon god. As for why the crimson statue came from the divine wilderness great world, and why the fortune jade came from the fortune mainland, the answer was even simpler. The demon god might have arrived in the divine wilderness great world 100,000 years ago, and at that time, the divine wilderness great world was still whole and had yet to shatter. But if this crimson statue really is the demon god's true body, then how did he avoid the Lord of Chaos detection and hide in the divine wilderness great world? This matter is not something I can know. However, you must be extremely careful. You must not be affected by this evil god. An evil god's true body, even if it is heavily injured and on the verge of death, is still powerful and strange. It is still far from what we can understand and fight against. The Lord of Myriad Treasures paused slightly at this point. I can even give you a suggestion. Offer this demon god to the Lord of Chaos. If this demon god really is the demon god's true body, once you give it to the Lord of Chaos, the benefits you will obtain will far exceed your imagination. Chapter 908. Offer it to the Master of Chaos. Yes. Even though the Master of Chaos is our enemy, and the enemy of an enemy is a friend, we should help the evil god's true body. But the benefits of helping the evil god's true body are far too lacking compared to the benefits of offering it to the Master of Chaos. If you hand the evil god's true body over to the Master of Chaos, even your identity as a chaos life form can be forgiven. You may even become a true chaos life form with the Master of Chaos's support and evolve into a chaotic universe. The Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures did not continue. If Tsing-Hui could evolve into a chaotic universe as a chaos life form, then the immortal Tao civilization would have the foundation to establish itself. At the very least, the continuation of their inheritance would no longer be a problem. However, this is only the most ideal outcome. There is another possibility that the Master of Chaos would discover my identity as a chaos life form and directly kill me along with the evil god's true body. Tsing-Hui said. The Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures fell silent. Although this possibility was very low, it was not completely impossible. Let me think. I need to think carefully. Tsing-Hui was somewhat confused by the news before him. You should think about it carefully. The Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures cautiously said, however, that blood-red statue is very likely the evil god's true body. You should deal with it as soon as possible. It is too dangerous. An evil god, even the weakest one, is far beyond our imagination. Even if it only has a 10,000th of its strength left, it will not be difficult to kill cultivators at our level. I understand. I will make a decision as soon as possible. Tsing-Hui said. In fact, the Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasure's suggestion of handing the evil god to the Master of Chaos was indeed the best way for others, but not for Tsing-Hui. Tsing-Hui had already guessed that the Fortune Jade on the Fortune mainland was most likely taken from the hands of the Master of Chaos by this evil god. Under such circumstances, if he offered the evil god to the Master of Chaos, the Master of Chaos would inevitably interrogate him about the whereabouts of the Fortune Jade. Once the Master of Chaos found out that the Fortune Jade was in the Divine Wilderness Great World, but could not find it, he would inevitably suspect the most outstanding genius of the Divine Wilderness Great World in recent years him. There was no need to guess what happened next. The evil god's true body. But since this evil god's true body has been peaceful for tens of thousands of years, it shouldn't cause any problems in the short term. I should still have time to think of a solution. Tsing-Hui pondered. Even so, the fact that he was carrying the true body of an evil god still made his hair stand on end. It was like a mortal transporting a nuclear bomb, and an unstable one at that. Even if he used his professional knowledge to speculate that this unstable nuclear bomb would not explode in a short period of time, before he was 100% sure that the bomb would be stabilized, that kind of fear would still follow him, making it difficult for him to calm down. Oh, Tsing-Hui let out a long sigh. Lord of Heaven, I need more information about this evil god and all the other evil gods. Please help me collect as much information as possible so that I can figure out the state of this evil god in my body. I understand. I'll do my best. Lord of Myriad Treasures nodded solemnly. Then, what do you plan to do with this evil god? My cultivation has reached a critical moment. I plan to enter seclusion for a period of time and complete this cultivation. After all, no matter what the situation is, it's always good to increase my strength. That's right. Only by becoming stronger can you be at ease when you encounter true danger. Lord of Myriad Treasures said with a regretful expression. It's a pity that we can't help you now. Lord of Heaven, there's no need for that. You've already given me a lot of help. If not for you, how could I, Tsing-Hui, reach such a level in such a short period of time? You're a chaos life form. As long as you understand your own essence, you can naturally grow rapidly by making a trip to the chaos void. Lord of Myriad Treasures shook his head. I won't delay any longer. I'll head to the divine wilderness great world to cultivate in seclusion. All right. Sing Hui bid farewell to Lord of Myriad Treasures and quickly left. He returned to the divine wilderness great world through the teleportation array. The reason why he didn't stay in the immortal Tao civilization was mainly because the immortal Tao civilization didn't have a fixed residence. In addition, he had the evil god's true body, a ticking time bomb. If it exploded, the immortal Tao civilization, which only had a trace of vitality left, would definitely be blown to smithereens. At that time, he would be the immortal Tao civilization's greatest sinner. Lord of Myriad Treasures clearly considered this point, so he didn't say anything to persuade him to stay. The evil god's true body. This joke isn't ordinary. Standing on the teleportation array, Sing Hui's face was filled with a bitter smile. Now he had truly stepped into the forest of experts at the top of the world. As long as he didn't offend those few ultimate experts, he could do whatever he wanted in the Master of Chaos territory. Even if he couldn't defeat those top experts, it wouldn't be difficult for him to escape unscathed. But even if his cultivation made another breakthrough and became an ultimate expert, it was still nothing in front of a true evil god. These two realms, the difference was too great. It was so great that if the other party really wanted to kill him, it would be as easy as moving a finger. But now, the only advantage was that this evil god had clearly been severely injured. It shouldn't cause too much trouble in a short period of time. Thinking of this, Sing Hui shook his head. His figure flashed, and he appeared outside the Hunyuan sword sect. Outside the Hunyuan sword sect, Sing Hui didn't enter. Instead, he sent a voice transmission to Master Firmament. Master, I will be in seclusion outside the divine wilderness great world for 1,000 years. If anything big happens, you can send someone to find me outside the divine wilderness great world. Of course, if it's a small matter, you can deal with it yourselves. Master Firmament, who was handling matters, was slightly startled. He hurriedly responded, Yes, Grand Elder, don't worry. I will take care of the Hunyuan sword sect's matters properly. I won't cause you any trouble. After responding, Sing Hui didn't reply. He directly leaped up and disappeared into the horizon. After knowing that Sing Hui was guarding the periphery of the divine wilderness great world, although he wouldn't interfere in the divine wilderness great world in any way, Master Firmament seemed to have found his backbone. His entire body was filled with endless power. For a moment, his fighting spirit was high. This was because he knew that as long as Sing Hui was still alive, no matter what danger they encountered, there would always be someone to support the vast sky for them. Sing Hui left the Hunyuan sword sect and went directly to the periphery of the divine wilderness great world. Considering that his breakthrough might cause quite a bit of commotion, he still went a little further away from the divine wilderness great world. Then, he found a place where the spatial storm was relatively stable. In fact, for cultivators who had reached his level of cultivation, the so-called spatial storm could no longer affect him. It was like a level 3 or 4 wind. It had a great impact on some mosquitoes and flies, but to humans, it was not worth mentioning. I have to hurry. It doesn't feel good to have a ticking time bomb on me. Ching Su murmured to himself before immersing himself in cultivation very soon. As the power accumulated in the Fortune Divine Jade continued to be consumed, the great Tao nomological principles represented by the remaining 3 sword techniques began to gradually appear and even become clearer. The appearance of the great Tao naturally brought about the perfection of the 4 supreme sword techniques. When he saw the true appearance of the 4 sword techniques again and saw the connection between them, he vaguely recognized the 4 sword techniques and even the predecessor of the 4 great Tao nomological principles. 4 immortal slaying swords, immortal slaying sword formation. These 4 great Tao were the 4 great Tao nomological principles of immortal slaying, immortal slaying, immortal slaying, and immortal trapping. They specialized in destruction and slaughter. Back then, these 4 great Tao and the sword formation they represented could be said to be famous in the immortal Tao civilization. Among them, demon ancestor Rahu had used these 4 great Tao to defeat Tao ancestor Hunyuan. If it weren't for the help of a series of chaotic beings, the ruler of the immortal Tao civilization would not have been the immortal Tao, but the demonic Tao. The might of these 4 great Tao was thus evident. Now that Qing Su had used the fortune jade to complete them one by one before refining them into his own heavenly way, the power of the heavenly way he had simulated immediately skyrocketed. I finally completed all 49 great Tao. 800 years later, Tsing Hui breathed a sigh of relief when he sensed the 49 great Tao revolving around the great Tao of unity. He was more than halfway done with the second level of the great Tao disc. Next, using the great Tao of unity and the 49 great Tao as a foundation, and using the fortune divine jade as the foundation, he would simulate a chaotic universe in the world of the immortal Tao civilization. Taiji, one body of chaos, is the one of the heavens. It gives birth to the number 2 of the yin and yang, which gives birth to the number 2 of the earth. Taiji gives birth to the number 1 of the earth, which gives birth to the number 3 of the heavens. The laws of Tao in Tsing Hui's mind constantly changed. During this process, the jade-shaped fortune divine jade transformed into a nebula. The nebula changed and spun rapidly. Under the influence of the great Tao of unity, pure energy rose and turbid energy sank. It gave birth to the numbers of heaven and earth, which gave birth to the numbers of Tao, earth, and heaven. The 3 numbers changed, giving birth to earth, water, fire, and wind, which gave birth to the numbers of 4. The 5 elements changed as well, giving birth to the numbers of 5. As the changes continued, a world was gradually born, giving birth to the concept of heaven and earth, the 5 elements, and earth, water, fire, and wind. After 1,000 years of evolution, a bleak, ancient, and desolate world finally emerged. Although this world was clearly modeled using the fortune divine jade as the foundation, everything within it felt so real. Apart from the lack of life and the harsh environment that had just formed, there was almost no difference between this world and the real world. My world has finally been formed. Tsing Hui felt an indescribable sense of pride as he sensed the virtual world in his mind. Genesis. This was a world that was completely his own. This kind of creation was different from the small worlds of cultivators who could create worlds with a thought. The small worlds of cultivators who could create worlds with a thought were nothing more than a spatial framework. Everything within had to be moved in from the outside world, including the mountains and rivers. They couldn't automatically form these strange phenomena inside, and if a cultivator died one day, the world would quickly collapse. However, everything in the world of green ruins was perfect. Even if cultivators died, the world could continue to reproduce and develop, to the point where new life forms and races would be born one day. This was Tsing Hui's world. His only regret now was that this world wasn't real. It was still a simulation. I've submitted 4 chapters for today. Please recommend them. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.